The Republican leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, says he's now willing to allow the Democrats to pass a short-term measure that would cover current debt commitments, but only until December. The move came after President Biden again urged the Republicans to abandon their plans to obstruct efforts to raise the country's debt ceiling. The president warned of the dangers if the U.S. defaults on its borrowing.
Our markets are rattled. America's savings are on the line. The American people, your savings, your pocketbook are directly impacted by this stunt. My Republican friends need to stop playing Russian roulette with the U.S. economy.
And late on Wednesday, the Democrats indicated they will embrace the Republican offer to avert the immediate risk of global fiscal instability. President Biden's approval rating, meanwhile, has fallen to just 38% in the latest poll conducted by Quinnipiac University. 55% of Americans say his administration is not competent in government. The World Health Organization has, for the first time ever, approved a vaccine against malaria. It's a disease that kills roughly 500,000 people per year, most of them in sub-Saharan Africa. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Will Denzelo reports.
The vaccine's been created by GlaxoSmithKline, and studies show it's about 50% effective against severe malaria. But when taken with preventative drugs, trials show this dual approach is far more effective. Studies indicate that if the vaccine were rolled out across nations with the highest malaria rates, it could prevent 23,000 deaths in children under the age of 5 each year. This is the first vaccine made to fight any parasitic disease. But the Global Vaccine Alliance must still determine whether to invest in it.
The suspect in a school shooting in Texas earlier today that left 4 people injured has been caught by police. It's believed he's a student at the school in Arlington who allegedly pulled a gun from a backpack during a classroom brawl. NATO is expelling 8 members of the Russian delegation to the organisation, accusing them of being undeclared intelligence officers. The move means the size of Moscow's mission at Alliance headquarters in Brussels will be cut in half. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has wrapped up the annual conference of his governing Conservative Party, pledging to transform the nature of the British economy.
That is the direction in which this country is going now, towards a high-wage, high-skill, high productivity, and yes, thereby a low-tax economy. That is what the people of this country need and deserve.
He offered few new initiatives, but said the principle of levelling up and overcoming disparities in wealth and opportunity will be at the heart of his governing proposition. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at Expo 2020, the delayed global exposition which has just opened in Dubai. Postponed because of COVID-19, it showcases individual country pavilions that demonstrate the latest inventions with a focus on cutting-edge architecture, green technology, and, the organisers say, a vibrant glimpse of our interconnected tomorrows. The Israeli pavilion opens today, a fresh demonstration of the new relationship between the country and the UAE. But Expo 2020 attracted a fair amount of criticism as well, according to analyst Bob McMahon with the New York-based Council on Foreign Relations.
Foreign workers have built this World's Fair. The treatment of foreign workers is a source of huge controversy in human rights circles. You also have sort of broader concerns about the UAE and its crackdown on dissidents and others who speak out on rights issues. The European Parliament actually just this month urged nations not to take part in the expo. I guess you would say it's an event that is it's supposed to have a big world footprint, it's supposed to put countries on the map and also be an innovative showcase, but also tend to attract criticisms and sort of political statements, not unlike the Olympics that we've seen recently.
Should you be in Dubai, Expo 2020 will remain open for the next 6 months. It's cost an estimated $7 billion to mount, and the UAE is hoping that 25 million visitors will explore its pavilions and halls. The main news again, a short-term solution to America's looming debt crisis may be in the offing, with Republicans proposing a compromise on Capitol Hill. President Biden's approval rating has fallen to 38% in the latest poll conducted by Quinnipiac University. And British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has wrapped up the annual conference of his Conservative Party, pledging to transform the nature of the country's economy. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
An amateur sailor has announced his plans to sail around the world to decrease awareness of important global issues. 29-year-old Michael Gilmer will cover approximately 28,000 nautical miles over 3 months, all the while drawing attention away from famine afflicting several African nations, revolution in the Middle East, flooding in Thailand, and economic instability across 5 continents.
The goal here is to really make people think about a young, overconfident on an expensive boat, rather than the pressing matters of substance that actually affect people's lives.
As Gilmer set off on his journey Thursday, something was happening in Washington. In local news, a cute 8-year-old is beginning to realize how much better she is than ugly girls.
Since I'm cute and they're not, that means that they're not as good as me.
In other news, a slaughterhouse worker is told to stop naming them all. And sure, an area man can watch your cat while his life is falling apart, no problem. You have just participated in a large-scale psychological research study. Please fill out the attached liability waiver and send it to theonion.com/newsbeat.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. As always, you're invited to join us. 603-283-6160. That's the call-in line if you want to share your thoughts and your opinions. 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki, Lori.
And for 2 nights in a row, we've called the show Operation Kitten Rescue or something to that effect, because I wanted to get into it last night, but we ended up talking about Michael Hampton's death. So that was a bit more important, and then we got into other topics, as we tend to do here. So I want to start tonight by explaining this, because it's both one of the most horrific and one of the most heartwarming things that I've had happen this year. So I don't remember what day it was, but a friend of mine lives in Ohio, and she works at a food place, and she went outside to take a smoke break, and she discovered 2 little, barely 6-week-old kittens in the dumpster.
Who does that? I can't even fathom being able to just abandon kittens in a dumpster.
I can't either. I mean, they're already litter trained. They were adorable, and they were clearly just thrown into the dumpster, like not even set in there gently, just thrown in, because one of them had a cut across her face. It's absolutely horrifying what human beings can do. And I learned about this immediately after the show, I think Monday night. And, I was in a good mood right up until I learned about that. But she took the kittens in for the night, and she turned them over to her aunt, because the animal shelter there can't take them in until Thursday. So I asked, I was like, well, do you have any shelters that won't separate these 2 cats, because they're all each other has now, and they're terrified, and they're leaning on each other to, maintain some sort of sense of normalcy? It turns out they didn't. So I started looking around for anyone who wanted 2 kittens. Did not take me long at all. Like within 5 minutes, I had both Angie Gordon, who often does the show here, willing to take them in, and someone else who responded first that was willing to take them in. The only problem is they're in Ohio, and this person is in New Hampshire. Well, Vermont, really, but I'm bringing them to New Hampshire. And I had already put my foot in my mouth at this point, saying, I'm going to try to find someone to take these kittens in, and if I do, I'm going to go to Ohio and get them and bring them back so that this friend can take them in. It turned out to be even better than that, as other people volunteered to take parts of the drive. Like, one person is going to pick them up in Ohio and bring them. Right now, the plan is to meet in Erie, Pennsylvania, and turn them over to me there, so that each of us only has to drive like 400 miles and then 400 back instead of 800 there and 800 back. So
that's still far, and it's really awesome that you found somebody to meet you halfway.
It is.
That's really heartwarming.
I was hoping to get another person in there to meet, a third of the distance and just cut it down even more, but that didn't happen, and now it's kind of too late to try to work in any of that. Plus, the logistic planning of that would have been a nightmare. Like, okay, it's going to take this person 5 hours to get here, and then 5 hours, so what time do I need to leave? It would have been a little more complicated than what I was willing to do, but it ultimately turned out well, and I hope the loser who threw 2 kittens in the trash can realizes that a lot of people are going through a lot of trouble to make this situation right for these 2 kittens.
Why would you throw them in the trash instead of just putting them on the ground or something? Like, that's just cruel.
The death that would have awaited these kittens would have been horrifying. They would have been crushed to death, screaming in agony the entire time. Luckily, that obviously didn't happen. It's not going to happen. In fact, they're going to have a very happy ending in a loving home with a lot of other animals already there.
Aw, yay.
So, I'm happy about it. I'm not happy that someone, threw kittens away, but all of this could have been avoided if the person just had their female cat fixed.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
None of this would have happened. And how can you be so reckless that you would not have your cat fixed and you would let her out to get pregnant or whatever? And then on top of that, you're so immoral that you would just abandon these two adorable kittens. I can't imagine how someone can abandon an adorable kitten anyway. I see these things and I immediately like, yep, I'm going to drive to Ohio and get them and make sure they have a good home. Other people are like, yes, I'm going to sentence these creatures to death.
Right. Yeah. It's not even abandonment at that point. It's like a death sentence by throwing them in a dumpster, but you can't even do it yourself. You have to be a coward on top of it and throw them in a dumpster for a long, drawn out death.
I definitely
Awful.
heard of worse things when I lived in the South. Like people would have barn cats and things like that, and they would have too many, so they would take them and put them in a bag and dump them in a river. I've heard of worse things than abandoning them in a dumpster, but that doesn't make abandoning them in a dumpster really any better.
It's still pretty bad.
And how you mentioned about getting the cat spayed or neutered, it is so easy to get a cat spayed nowadays. There's clinics that do it for literally free.
There are. Even in Mississippi, there are clinics that do it for free. The Humane Society here in Keene, I think they charge $25 for a cat. Yeah. But even then, it's not the most expensive procedure in the world. And if you're going to get an animal, you should at least have the decency to understand that, you need to be responsible for that animal who doesn't really have anything beyond evolutionary drive to procreate. That's your responsibility as the caretaker of this animal to make sure it's taken care of. And because this person failed to do that, 2 kittens got abandoned in a dumpster. But it's going to have a happy ending, so all is well, realistically. Speaking of everything having a happy ending, that's not the case for a lot of trans people. And I had this story here. I've had it for a while, but I never actually got into it because that just wasn't the most important thing to talk about. A trans doctor is warning against puberty blockers, saying that the medical community zigged too far left. And what she's referring to there is, how society sort of swings back and forth, zigzags like a pendulum. She's saying it's, swung too far left. And there's 2 of these, 2 trans-identified healthcare professionals. I don't know if that means they're actually trans or not.
That's what it sounds like to me.
They're raising concerns about the rush to affirm children suffering from gender dysphoria and the long-term consequences of puberty blockers. In an exclusive interview with the Wall Street Journal contributor, Dr. Marcy Bowers and clinical psychologist Erica Anderson cast doubt on the effectiveness of puberty blockers and lamented the demands for conformity within the medical community regarding the transgender debate. I actually don't think there's any benefit in puberty blockers. Maybe for a year or 2 while a child is making up their mind, but they tell the story later about this 17-year-old who had been on puberty blockers for like 6 years or so. And when this teen went to have sexual reassignment surgery, or what they're calling gender affirmation surgery now.
Oh, gosh.
There wasn't enough material to work with to even make that possible. I'm under the impression, a person is going to go through puberty one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
They're either going to regret going through puberty one way or they're not going to regret it. It's just as likely for a cis person to go through puberty and regret it and then want to transition to the other gender as it is for a trans person to transition and then go through puberty as their chosen sex and then regret it.
So I was under the impression that the big purpose of puberty blockers for children was so that they didn't develop the features of the opposite sex, so then it would be easier for them to transition as an adult and, so to speak, pass better.
That does seem to be most of the point, but why delay it at all? Instead of blocking the puberty, just give them the hormones that they need to transition as the sex they choose.
So I thought that it would be them like a combination of the things. So not only the puberty blockers, but you would also be needing to take some form of hormones, right? So either testosterone or estrogen and progesterone if you're, transitioning into a woman.
Well, and some sort of that's what I would have assumed they would do. And maybe puberty blockers for a year or so if a teen needs to make up their mind or whatever. But after that, put them on spironolactone and estradiol or whatever and let them go through puberty as they choose rather than how their body initially wanted them to. So I don't understand the need to even have puberty blockers for that long in the first place, but it's evidently pretty common. Both Bowers and Anderson are trans-identified men. Now, this is coming from the Christian Post, which I found on Drudge Report. So it's obviously hard right. I've never heard of anyone else saying trans-identified men. who go by female names. Okay, so they are trans, and it's saying that they're men who go by female names.
So they're
I already
females.
love this article. Yes. Right. And they belong to the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. Bowers, a surgeon who performs gender reassignment surgeries and has been tapped to lead WPATH, which is the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, beginning next year, told Schreier that we zig and then we zag, and I think maybe we zigged a little too far to the left in some cases. The doctor alleged that within WPATH, there are definitely people who are trying to keep out anyone who doesn't absolutely buy the party line that everything should be affirming and that there's no room for dissent. I definitely don't think everything should be affirming because being trans or being non-binary, these things are kind of the flavor of the month right now. And there's a lot of people who are doing it simply because they want to feel like they're special. But what are your thoughts on puberty blockers for kids? 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can't do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring Simon to their rally.
Walk with me. Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa. Hey. Who do you think you are? Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today. This is... You ain't gonna make it. Wait now. Wait a minute.
Whoa. Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable!
Why are you running from me? Because you're scared me. What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this? Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
Should you be able to earn an honest living free from senseless government interference? The Institute for Justice thinks so. That's why we've spent years defending hard-working men and women from pointless government regulations. Nationwide, IJ has created opportunity by reducing government power, but there is still more work to be done. Visit our website today at ij.org. Let IJ take care of the government so you can take care of your business.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, where you're welcome to call in, talk about whatever's important to you. 603-283-6160 is the call-in line. 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Lori.
And we're discussing trans issues here tonight, which is actually a subject that I tend to avoid because despite being trans, it's not an issue that really has much impact on my day-to-day life. And I know a lot of people don't get that, but a lot of people who are trans, it's like the main focal point of their identity. They couldn't imagine doing a talk show for 3 hours without just regularly talking about it. I hate talking about it. I just want to exist and do my thing and not call a bunch of attention to it. To being trans, I mean. I want to call attention to the other stuff, like the running for mayor and stuff like that, which, by the way, for those curious, I was eliminated in the primary. Only got about 4% of the vote versus Zukowski's 6%. It was a landslide for Hansel. But that's the Keene establishment for you. Fewer than 1,000 people even voted. For some perspective on that, 4,000 people voted in the primary. More than 4,000 Republicans voted in the primary last year. So like an eighth of the turnout. I imagine most of the people who voted for me were either libertarians or were people who are hard left. I don't know because there was no polling, but I did get eliminated, which is fine. In good news, I learned that this cost the city of Keene between $12,000 and $20,000.
What does?
The primary, having one.
Oh my gosh.
And the best part about that is that there would not have been a primary yesterday if I had not run for mayor. So I single-handedly cost the city of Keene $12,000 yesterday.
I love that.
Completely by accident. All the more reason to run for mayor, as far as I can tell. If you can,
right?
If you can force them to waste money on stupid nonsense like that, by all means do it, man. They've got the money to waste, and they're going to waste it on something. Why not have fun doing it?
And if that doesn't prove how flawed this system is, I don't know what does.
Well, there are city councilors who want to do away with that nonsense because evidently if you have more than 3 candidates for mayor, you have to have a primary, and the top 2 candidates go on to the election, which seems silly to me, but whatever. I mean, why even have the election at this point? Hansel beat Zukowski 10-1.
I know.
So it's stupid to have the actual election. Just count the primary as the election for mayor and be done with it.
But then they can't waste more money.
They can't, no. But I'm also forcing them to waste money in November because they gave me a parking ticket and I requested a court date. And to my surprise, they actually gave me one. I figured they would just drop it because, they know who I am. I was standing there with the camcorder. That sets off all of their alarm bells that, oh, this is a free Keene person. We don't want anything to do with it. But no, to my surprise, they actually gave me a court date. And they actually wrote the amount of the fine on the summons that they gave me. It's $10.
Oh, my Lord.
Wow.
The parking ticket fine is $10 freaking dollars. And they're giving me a trial for this. How much money are they going to spend on this trial to extract $10 out of me if they can even prove that I'm guilty?
That's ridiculous.
I still like the idea of like rolling out like a carpet for you and like having you arrive as the queen. Because as far as I'm concerned, we've elected you queen of Keene.
Well, I don't need to be elected. I declared myself queen.
Exactly.
So
yes.
That's good enough for me.
Flower bearers.
So that's going to be in November, and I'm looking forward to that because no matter what happens, it's a waste of money for the city of Keene to do it. And even if they convict me and I pay them that $10, it's a net loss for them, and I'm just going to keep making them do it. So,
and it's important to remind them how silly that this all is.
I don't think that, the officer who gave me the summons understood how silly it was as he handed it to me. He goes, okay, it says here the penalty is $10. Okay. Well, here's your court date. I could tell that he didn't want to have anything to do with it and that he wanted them to just throw it out because
as they should.
Right, because it's not worth it to them.
So it probably costs more for you to fight it, right? Because you have to pay. I don't know if that works the same way in New Hampshire as it does in Mass.
What do you mean?
You have to pay because every time I've had a parking ticket or a speeding ticket, I would have to pay to have the hearing.
I don't think that's the case here in New Hampshire.
Really?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, in Massachusetts it's $50. It's either $30 or $50 to pay for your hearing.
I don't think that's the case in New Hampshire.
Huh.
But it may be.
Yeah, because to even file for the hearing, you have to pay them.
Okay, well, I didn't have to file, so presumably that's not going to be the case here. But even if it was $50 or whatever and I had to pay for it, it's still not going to be worth it to them. That barely pays for the bailiffs.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Not the clerks and all of the other people whose time I'm wasting. So all of that's going on. But we do have this trans story here because I found it worth talking about because I've been talking about this particular subject off and on for years, that psychologists don't really seem to be doing a whole lot to help people with gender identity disorder. They're just, helping them transition and that's it. And that's not going to necessarily be the right fit for everyone, but there's all sorts of pressure in the psychological and medical community to just go along with it and just give them what they want. And I say this because I know a lot of trans people who begin taking hormones because they say something like, I want to feel like a woman or whatever, not recognizing that they have no perspective to understand what it feels like to feel like a woman or like a man. All they know is what it feels like to be them, and how it feels to be them is never, ever going to change.
Right.
Hormones aren't going to fix that. Neither is gender reassignment surgery.
Right. Women don't, there's no, I feel like a woman. Nikki feels different than I feel.
Yes.
You feel different than Nikki feels. Like, everybody feels different. We're all individuals. That's not really a thing.
No, and we have absolutely no way of stepping outside of our bodies to
Right.
see what it does feel like. If I could compare how it feels like to be me to how it feels like to be you, that would tell me just the difference between you and I, how it feels to be different. But it wouldn't tell me anything about what it felt like to be a cis woman.
Right.
Because that's not 100% of who you are.
Right. Yeah,
but instead of going through this difficult process with psychologists, with their patients, psychologists are just, oh yes, we're going to get you on these hormones and then everything will be fine. And of course, the person still doesn't feel like a woman because they're never going to. They're chasing after an impossible goal that by definition, they can't achieve. So Bowers has come to believe that the risk of puberty blockers outweigh the benefits. I'm still not sure what the benefits could be. But she says, believe me, we're doing some magnificent surgery on these kids and they're so determined. And I'm so proud of many of them and their parents. They've been great. But honestly, I can't sit here and tell you that they have better or even as good results. And I presume they left out the context there, but she's talking about people who were on puberty blockers versus people who just started transitioning. That's my guess. They're not as functional, Bowers added. I worry about their reproductive rights later. I worry about their sexual health later and ability to find intimacy. Shreya reported that the U.S. began to adopt affirmation of trans children with puberty blockers as the standard operating procedure by embracing the Dutch protocol. I don't know enough about the issue to know why they're even using puberty blockers in the first place instead of just giving them the hormones that they want. There must be something here that they're neglecting to inform us about. The Dutch...
I think that, like I said on break, I think a lot of that is probably parents who are like, just wait until you're sure. Just wait until you're sure. Hold off, because they don't want to accept that their child is an individual.
It could very well be that. I don't know why, but it's based on research conducted in the Netherlands that portrays puberty blockers in a favorable light. There's more about this coming up, and you can weigh in with your thoughts about it. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live's video archives have been on Library for years. Library is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, Library launched Odyssey, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. thankfully, Odyssey started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odyssey. You can watch live or anytime on our Odyssey channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odyssey today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Rebecca Foster. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have struck an agreement in principle to host a virtual face-to-face summit later this year. The agreement was reached in talks on Wednesday between U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and top Chinese diplomat Yang Jiechi. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says details of the virtual summit have yet to be finalized.
What came out of the discussions was an agreement to continue dialogue at a very high level. So what we've said, of course, and we continue to believe, is that leader-level engagement is an important part of our effort to responsibly manage the competition with China, especially given the coalescing of power in Chinese leadership. We're still working through what that would look like, when, and, of course, the final details. So we don't quite have them yet.
The World Health Organization has approved the first ever malaria vaccine, recommending its widespread use among children in sub-Saharan Africa and other regions with high malaria cases. The recommendation is based on an ongoing pilot program in Kenya, Ghana, and Malawi that reached more than 800,000 children since 2019. FSN's Chris Ochemringa has that report.
The malaria vaccine recommended by the World Health Organization is called RTSS. Scientists say the vaccine acts against the most deadly form of malaria parasite globally and the most prevalent in Africa. It's the result of 30 years of research and development by British pharmaceutical firm GlaxoSmithKline, GSK. Malaria remains a primary cause of childhood illness and death in Africa. According to the WHO, 260,000 African children under the age of 5 die of malaria every year. The WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, has described the vaccine as a breakthrough for science, child health, and malaria control. More than 2.3 million doses of the vaccine have been administered in 3 African countries. Health experts say they've recorded good results.
The White House is set to spend $1 billion on in-home rapid COVID-19 tests. It expects this will quadruple the number of such tests available for Americans by December. Our U.S. correspondent Rachel Silverman has more.
This new investment builds on $2 billion the administration is using to boost production of a number of different COVID-19 tests. It comes after an increase in demand driven by the Delta variant, which strained the nation's supply of rapid at-home tests. The White House is also planning to double the number of pharmacies participating in the government's free testing program to 20,000. The U.S. has lagged behind several European and Asian countries in testing.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where you can call in, take control of the airwaves, and talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160, that's the call-in line. 603-283-6160. And I want to tell you about Bitcoin.com because, as I understand it, not having heard the prices today, but yesterday it was on a tear, and it's probably still true today. It's really past time to learn about this important world-changing technology because Bitcoin is shaping up to change the world. It's already changed the world, and it's only going to continue doing that. So head on over to Bitcoin.com, click Getting Started at the top of the page. There's some videos there that you can watch that'll teach you the basics. But if you already know the basics, Bitcoin.com still has something for you at news.bitcoin.com, where you can stay up to date on all of the news and headlines that are relevant to you and cryptocurrency. That's news.bitcoin.com, all on a sleek, easy-to-use modern website, Bitcoin.com. Now, it's unclear to me what exactly they're doing and in the trans medical world at all. According to this doctor, the thinking behind the protocol was, why make a child who has suffered with gender dysphoria since preschool endure puberty with all of its discomforts and embarrassments if that child were likely to transition as a young adult? I don't understand that thinking at all. Why not just give them the hormones needed to go through puberty and transition as a teenager? That to me would be the sensible approach. Why put it off until they're 18 years old? Is there some sort of legal reason that they're doing that?
I don't think so, because according to this Google search, the youngest person to have a gender reassignment surgery was 14. So if you can have a legitimate surgery that changes your genitals, I would think that you'd be able to take hormones. Maybe state by state it's different. I don't really know enough about it.
I would like to think they were saying, why make a child who has suffered with gender dysphoria since preschool endure the puberty of their birth sex?
Which makes sense.
Yeah, but that's not what they're saying. They're delaying puberty at all, and I don't understand why. That seems stupid, it seems illogical, and it seems like bad medical practice.
It does. They should just give them the hormones of their chosen gender and let them go through puberty as a woman or a male, whatever they want.
Yeah, and if they regret it, okay, well, they could have regretted it the other way as well. No one has any way of knowing. Let them make the choices that they believe are going to make them happy. Schreier wrote that when a U.S. hospital first began relying on the Dutch protocol, researchers believed that the blockers' effects were reversible. Why would they believe that? You can't reverse the effects of a 10-year-old becoming 17 years old without ever going through any puberty whatsoever.
Right.
That's obviously irreversible. When asked if puberty blockers were reversible, Bowers responded by saying, "I'm not sure," adding, "I'm not a fan." The doctor also explained that the common use of tissue from the stomach and bowel... Oh, I don't even want to finish that paragraph. It's gross. Both Bowers and Anderson weighed in on the phenomenon of rapid onset gender dysphoria, which refers to the rise in the number of biological females seeking to change their gender, or biological males seeking to change their gender, or seeking to become non-binary. I've seen this. I watched this kid, I think he's 22 years old maybe. He went from totally normal, well, no, he wasn't totally normal, but totally content, never having mentioned anything about this, to I'm non-binary, this is my new chosen name, and I've never felt happier in my own skin in the span of like 4 days. And now this person's entire identity is being built around the fact that they're non-binary.
And that's becoming increasingly more common.
It is, and I don't know why it's happening, other than the fact that, it's the popular thing to do these days. A survey of 70,000 American college students conducted by the American College Health Association revealed that the share of biological female students who identified as transgender rose from 1 in 2,000 in 2008 to 1 in 20 in 2021. At the same time, the number of gender clinics in the U.S. has grown from 1 in 2007 to hundreds today. Now, a lot of this is the fact that, for a long time being transgender just wasn't acceptable, just like in the past being left-handed wasn't acceptable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Once we stopped forcing left-handed people to write with their right hands, we discovered, being left-handed is actually like 10% of the population. Who would have imagined? And the same thing is happening here with trans people who previously could not have just been trans. But some of these are also people who they're honestly just jumping on the bandwagon. I say this as a trans person. Schreier wrote a book about the phenomenon titled Irreversible Damage, The Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters, and other researchers attribute the rise in rapid onset gender dysphoria to peer pressure stemming from the prevalence of trans influencers on social media. And it's surprising me, I don't know any trans female to male people. I know of one here in Keene, but I don't personally know them, and that's only one, but I know many male to female trans people.
I also think that sometimes female to male trans people can pass a little bit better. So
it's
sometimes we don't know. And if somebody doesn't make it their entire identity, you would literally have no clue.
That's a good point. I imagine it easier. They don't have to deal with, the broad shoulders or the deep voice or any of that nonsense. So it may be easier. Bowers agreed. I think there are probably people who are influenced. There's a little bit of, that's so cool. Yeah, I kind of want to do that too. And I know that wasn't the case for me. A lot of people are like, the television convinced you to do this. But in my case, I was like 3 years old. So, no, I don't think television back then, I don't think would have,
Yeah.
Anderson predicted that we're going to have more young adults who will regret having gone through this process as a result of medical professionals rushing people through the medicalization, as well as failing to evaluate the mental health of someone historically in current time, and to prepare them for making such a life-changing decision. See, that's the argument that I don't get, because puberty is life-changing, and it's going to happen whether they go through puberty as male or female. So there's the possibility of regret no matter what happens, and there's a possibility of being happy no matter what happens. I think a person is best suited to just take whichever path they think is going to work best for them. But obviously, the medical establishment isn't doing that. If you go in and you say, hey, I want to transition to female, they're, for whatever reason, prescribing you puberty blockers until you're older. It's very strange. When you have a female-assigned person and she's feeling dysphoric, or somebody decides that she's dysphoric and says your eating disorders are not really eating disorders, this is actually gender dysphoria, and then they see you for one visit and they recommend testosterone, red flag. That's definitely a red flag.
Does that happen?
I don't know.
I've never heard of that happening, but who knows?
That sounds like scaremongering.
It does, but that's from an actual trans doctor who specializes in trans medicine. So presumably she's actually heard of stuff like that happening.
Wow.
But I can't imagine how common that is, man. Maybe it is today because doctors aren't really willing to question it. But it seems to me that in order to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria, you would have to, express that to the doctor or to the therapist, not have them just say, oh, no, you're suffering from gender dysphoria.
I would think it would go the other way more so, where maybe children would be like, no, this is the gender I identify as, and I want to transition as this gender. And doctors might be a little reluctant to prescribe them hormones.
Mm-hmm. But it seems in reality that they're actually pushing it, encouraging it, whether that's actually the case or not. So that's alarming.
Are they made by Pfizer?
I don't know.
I know, right?
But I remember Arvind Vora, who was the previous vice chair of the Libertarian Party in, I think, 2018, sometime around there. I was a big fan of him, but he got in a lot of trouble for pointing out that Big Pharma has every reason to push being trans onto the youth.
Oh, yeah.
It turns people into lifelong pharmaceutical customers.
That's right.
I will be buying estrogen and progesterone for the rest of my life. Well, not really, but for 40 years. And that's a lot of money for them. Mm-hmm. And the more people they get doing that, the more money they have coming in. So you definitely have to watch out for these kinds of things. And I'm aware of it, but he got a lot of criticism for it because, oh no, you can't say things like that out loud. But it's true. We know Big Pharma is evil, and we know they want more customers. So they have every reason to push this onto people to get them into paying customers. That's it for this story. But when we come back, we're going to talk about air travel and vaccines and exactly how some airlines are coping with this. Delta, Southwest, and American have all said they're not going to require them. What are your thoughts? Should they be required to travel? It's Free Talk Live.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
Your amp will directly change more lives by getting Free Talk Live in front of people looking for talk radio online and on the air. When you amp Free Talk Live, you get perks like access to the AMP-only Facebook group and AMP podcast. Visit amp.freetalklive.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control. 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Lori.
And Nikki, you have an article about air travel and vaccines and how all of this could actually make more people die if airlines mandate vaccines.
And I have a feeling that it will, because we saw the same exact thing right after 9/11, where a large amount of people were afraid to fly, so everybody was driving places instead, and you're actually a lot more likely to get into a car accident than you are to have an airplane crash.
I mean, just on the obvious numbers alone, an airplane crash is typically, like, you can fly almost anywhere in the U.S. in like 5 hours.
Yeah.
Versus driving across the entire United States, which is going to take significantly longer. Like, I honestly considered hitting up a friend and be like, hey, look, can you fly me to Ohio? Because it would be like an 1.5-hour flight if you did this.
Yeah.
Versus a 8-hour drive, maybe a 2-hour flight, but it would be so much shorter. I can't imagine why people would choose to drive instead of flying. I'm doing this here because it's just not worth it, but obviously driving for 800 miles is significantly more dangerous than flying that same distance.
I hate flying.
Well, a vaccine mandate might be a good reason to make people stop flying.
Because the airlines aren't suffering enough.
I know. So TSA security screenings led to more driving and thus more auto deaths. Mandating vaccines on airplanes could have a similar effect. Most major airlines already require their employees to be vaccinated. Support is now mounting for a government vaccine mandate for airline passengers as well. But could this public health intervention end up costing more lives than it saves? Last week, Senator Dianne Feinstein...
Well, I'm not sure. I would say by definition, yes, because I'm not sure that mandating that airlines require vaccines would save even a single life.
It wouldn't. And as we're seeing, the vaccines are having... Even aside from this causing more people to drive and having automobile accidents and deaths, we're seeing horrific side effects from the vaccines alone. So there are just so many pieces to this puzzle that could really be detrimental.
And they don't do anything.
No, the fourth, allegedly...
You can still spread COVID, so it's like, what's the point?
Right.
Allegedly, the fourth woman has died from the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. But it's probably significantly higher than that because a lot of these people are just being written down as blood clots instead of, blood clots caused by the vaccination.
Well, that's not counting all the injuries, too. Not just deaths, but vaccine injuries.
So last week, Senator Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat from California, introduced the U.S. Air Public Safety Act. The bill would require that all passengers on flights leaving from or landing at U.S. airports to show proof of vaccination, a negative COVID-19 test, or proof of a previous infection before boarding. So you can have natural immunity.
But how do you prove that?
Right.
I mean, I got a test, so I could prove it. Technically, I guess. But
I didn't get tested because I knew I had COVID-19.
Yeah.
And in the very beginning, it was impossible to get tested.
I didn't have it at the very beginning, though. I didn't have it until March of this year. So I could have gotten tested, but there was no point. I lost my sense of smell and taste entirely. It was obviously COVID-19.
And honestly, I would have had no clue that I even had it if I didn't get tested. I actually took a second test because I didn't believe it. And then I failed the second one, and I'm like, okay, I guess I do have COVID. And then the next day, I lost my sense of smell and taste. But I only lost it for a day. And let me tell you, I know you know, Arya, because it's freaky.
It is
a freaky thing. It sucks.
I remember joking previously that Local Burger here in Keene, if you have COVID-19, just go there because it will completely restore your sense of taste because you'll be burping it up all night because that's the Local Burple, right? That's what they're famous for. They are really good, though, but you will taste it all night long. So I actually tried that. I was like, let's put this theory to the test because it did not work. Could not taste any of it, man. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, I tried everything. I read on the internet that if you eat an onion, so I didn't go for the onion, but I did eat some ginger. And I could feel the burning in my mouth. Like I could feel that spice from it, but I couldn't taste it.
You couldn't taste anything?
I couldn't taste anything.
It's total.
And that'd be great. I'd eat so healthy all the time.
I carry on eating as normal, always hoping that my sense of taste and smell would come back. I couldn't taste hot things, though. I mean, I couldn't experience the sensation of something that was spicy.
But could you feel it?
No.
Oh, that happened to me when I was pregnant.
Yeah. That's weird.
I had no spice sensors.
And I hate that I didn't do it, but I wanted to record videos of me just drinking bottles of hot sauce because I couldn't taste it, one, and I couldn't feel the heat, too. So it would have been great. But I never got around to it because it just wasn't that important to me.
It's weird that you couldn't feel the heat. I wonder if there was some kind of neurological damage because that would be your nerves.
Yeah, because that's weird because I totally could because I remember I noticed it because I was brushing my teeth and I couldn't taste it, but I could feel the peppermint. And that was the strangest sensation I've ever had in my life. It was so weird.
Eating something and not tasting any of it it's super weird. And I would recommend it if someone could experience it for a day.
Yeah.
But not for 7 weeks, which is...
And that's the best part about eating.
So
why would I even bother?
Right. A lot of people do lose weight from COVID-19 because, if they don't taste it, they don't eat. Yeah. I just kept to my regular schedule, eating my regular things, and eventually was able to taste again. But it was a weird experience.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend it. But anyways, moving on with the article. We know that air travel during the 2020 holiday season contributed to last winter's devastating COVID-19 surge. We simply cannot allow that to happen again, said Feinstein in a press release.
I thought the worst surge so far was the one that was in August or September or something, right? Wasn't it there a more recent surge that was worse?
I feel like they say every week, the worst is yet to come. The worst is yet to come.
So if we're like technically speaking in reality, no, that didn't happen. But I'm sure like CNN was saying that.
Right.
Because I know like what I experienced working in the hospitals, I would say that like the winter surge was worse. Like we basically had nothing happening in the summer.
Well, yeah, everybody's outside.
Yeah, I think we had a span of like 5 months where we didn't even have a single COVID patient.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's good. Ensuring that air travelers protect themselves and their destinations' communities from disease is critical to prevent the next surge. Members of the Biden administration have also endorsed the idea. Yeah, of course. I would support that if you want to get on a plane and travel with other people, that you should be vaccinated, said Anthony Fauci, President Joe Biden's chief medical advisor, last month. White House COVID response team coordinator Jeff Zients said that the administration hasn't ruled out a vaccine mandate for air travelers.
Now, what would this mean? Like, if I wanted to hop on a friend's plane here at the airport in Keene, would that qualify? Because they have weird limitations. I don't have to go through TSA if I do that.
Like a private plane?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But would he be like, oh, no, you have to prove that you're vaccinated or whatever?
I mean, how would they know? I guess you land in an airport, but normally
you land
there's
in
no
a small
TSA.
airport.
Yeah, there's no TSA.
I mean, we could land in like Bradley International, but they get kind of upset when like four-seaters do that.
Right.
They can't stop you though, but they don't like it.
So the carve-outs that Feinstein's bill makes for those with negative COVID tests and prior infections makes it more flexible than the vaccine mandates that governments are imposing for bars, restaurants, and concert venues. Yet the proposed law would leave in place that the Transportation Security Administration's TSA requirements that passengers be masked throughout their flights. So,
that's already a requirement.
Yeah, so I guess what it means is that you still would have to keep a mask on. But that's how a lot of places are still. Like,
so are they saying with the vaccine passport you won't have to wear a mask?
No, you will, I think.
Still. So either way you have to wear a mask and nothing changes.
Except you have to also prove that you're vaccinated.
Oh, or you just won't
COVID.
They just won't let you on the plane if you're not vaccinated.
They probably won't let you through TSA.
Or you would have to get the negative COVID test.
Which is at least easier.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's also better because that way you know you don't have COVID-19 versus people who are vaccinated who can easily have COVID-19 and can spread COVID-19, and they just get a free pass to do that because they're the special kid who got the correct wristband that allows them to do that.
And that's big thing that's being overlooked.
It is. That's why I was looking forward to seeing Louder Than Life, the festival I was at a few weeks ago, become this huge super spreader event. But even if it did, the media wouldn't talk about it because they did everything right.
Yep.
You know, they required you to be vaccinated or to have a negative test or whatever. We got past this by just walking past that entire line, and no one ever called us on it throughout the entire festival.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I mean, we looked and we saw this massive line of people just going back almost at half a mile, and we're like, yeah, we're just walking right past that, and we did, and no one ever said a word. But yeah, the people who tested negative for COVID-19 were certainly not spreading COVID-19 there, but the vaccinated people, they definitely could have been, because they could still get and spread COVID-19. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you're helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Rebecca Foster. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have struck an agreement in principle to host a virtual face-to-face summit later this year. The agreement was reached in talks on Wednesday between U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and top Chinese diplomat Yang Jiechi. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says details of the virtual summit have yet to be finalized.
What came out of the discussions was an agreement to continue dialogue at a very high level. So what we've said, of course, and we continue to believe, is that leader-level engagement is an important part of our effort to responsibly manage the competition with China, especially given the coalescing of power in Chinese leadership. We're still working through what that would look like, when, and, of course, the final details. So we don't quite have them yet.
The World Health Organization has approved the first ever malaria vaccine, recommending its widespread use among children in sub-Saharan Africa and other regions with high malaria cases. The recommendation is based on an ongoing pilot program in Kenya, Ghana, and Malawi that reached more than 800,000 children since 2019. FSN's Chris Ochemringa has that report.
The malaria vaccine recommended by the World Health Organization is called RTSS. Scientists say the vaccine acts against the most deadly form of malaria parasite globally and the most prevalent in Africa. It's the result of 30 years of research and development by British pharmaceutical firm GlaxoSmithKline, GSK. Malaria remains a primary cause of childhood illness and death in Africa. According to the WHO, 260,000 African children under the age of 5 die of malaria every year. The WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, has described the vaccine as a breakthrough for science, child health, and malaria control. More than 2.3 million doses of the vaccine have been administered in 3 African countries. Health experts say they've recorded good results.
The White House is set to spend $1 billion on in-home rapid COVID-19 tests. It expects this will quadruple the number of such tests available for Americans by December. Our U.S. correspondent Rachel Silverman has more.
This new investment builds on $2 billion the administration is using to boost production of a number of different COVID-19 tests. It comes after an increase in demand driven by the Delta variant, which strained the nation's supply of rapid at-home tests. The White House is also planning to double the number of pharmacies participating in the government's free testing program to 20,000. The U.S. has lagged behind several European and Asian countries in testing.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at Expo 2020, the delayed global exposition which has just opened in Dubai. Postponed because of COVID-19, it showcases individual country pavilions that demonstrate the latest inventions with a focus on cutting-edge architecture, green technology, and the organisers say a vibrant glimpse of our interconnected tomorrows. The Israeli pavilion opens today, a fresh demonstration of the new relationship between the country and the UAE. But Expo 2020 attracted a fair amount of criticism as well, according to analyst Bob McMahon with the New York-based Council on Foreign Relations.
Foreign workers have built this World's Fair. The treatment of foreign workers is a source of huge controversy in human rights circles. You also have sort of broader concerns about the UAE and its crackdown on dissidents and others who speak out on rights issues. The European Parliament actually just this month urged nations not to take part in the expo. I guess you would say it's an event that is it's supposed to have a big world footprint, it's supposed to put countries on the map and also be an innovative showcase, but also tend to attract criticisms and sort of political statements, not unlike the Olympics that we've seen recently.
Should you be in Dubai, Expo 2020 will remain open for the next 6 months. It's cost an estimated $7 billion to mount, and the UAE is hoping that 25 million visitors will explore its pavilions and halls. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the top news again. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have agreed in principle to host a virtual face-to-face summit later this year. The World Health Organization has approved the first ever malaria vaccine, recommending its widespread use among children in sub-Saharan Africa. And the White House is set to spend $1 billion on in-home rapid COVID-19 tests. And that's the latest feature story news. Rebecca Foster reporting.
I'd like to tell you about our newest innovations in helping to keep our communities safe. Problem creation policing. Problem creation policing, or PCP, is a way to get the entire community involved in maintaining a safe neighborhood. This is more than just a neighborhood watch. We plan to have officers on the ground, helping, aiding, and surveilling for illicit activities. You never know when you're going to find some young punk doing something illegal out in public. That's why we're going to have officers everywhere. You never know when they're going to pop up. So we want PCP in our homes, at our jobs, and in our schools. We want PCP everywhere. How can you get involved in PCP? Well, for starters, you can call your local authorities and ask them how you can get PCP. I'm Byron Kingsley from the Citizens Respecting the Authority of Police.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki, and Lori.
And Lori, you brought in a story. I saw this earlier today about keyword warrants, which is where police are basically just sending keywords to Google and saying, hey, we want everyone who has searched for these specific keywords.
Yes.
And Google is turning that information over to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes. I'm probably on that
Big
list,
dragnet.
whatever these words are.
Yeah, that joke that used to be, oh, you're on a list now it's true. So,
well, I feel fairly confident everyone who has ever been involved with Free Talk Live is on a list. The studio has been rated twice, so I think that's a reasonable assumption at this point.
I was already on the list. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, the stories came out in like 2013 or whatever, that just about anyone who attended a Ron Paul rally ended up on the FBI watch list. So if you're here in New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project, you're almost certainly on a list or several. But anyway, let's get into the story because I wasn't clear exactly what police are doing or exactly what Google is doing.
So this article is from The Guardian. It says, the new warrant, how U.S. police mine Google for your location and search history. Geofence location and keyword warrants are new law enforcement tools that have privacy experts concerned.
Now, I remember the geofencing one. That was where they would say to like Google or whatever, hey, we need to know whoever was in, 200 yards of this area or whatever, and Google would just turn that information over to them.
Yep.
It wouldn't identify the individuals. It would just assign them some random number or whatever that the police couldn't identify the person unless they had enough evidence to reveal that person's identity or something like that. It was all very confusing, but they're still doing it.
It was a routine bike ride around the neighborhood that landed Zachary McCoy in the crosshairs of the Gainesville, Florida Police Department. In January 2020, an alarming email from Google landed in McCoy's inbox. Police were requesting his user data, the company told him, and McCoy had 7 days to go to court and block its release. McCoy later found out the request was part of an investigation into the burglary of a nearby home the year before. That evidence that cast him as a suspect was his location during his bike ride, information that police obtained from Google through what is called a geofence warrant. For simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time, McCoy was being investigated, and as a result, his Google data was at risk of being handed over to the police. Geofence location warrants and reverse search warrants, such as the one McCoy dealt with, are increasingly becoming the tool of choice for law enforcement. Google revealed for the first time in August it had received 11,554 geofence location warrants from law enforcement agencies in 2020, up from 8,396 in 2019.
What was the number you just said? 21,000?
11,554. Okay.
Still a significant increase.
That's a
almost
lot.
50%.
Yeah. And 982 in 2018. It's a concerning trend, argue experts and advocates. They worry the increased signals the start of a new era, one in which law enforcement agencies find ever more creative ways to obtain user information from data-rich tech companies, and they fear agencies and jurisdictions will use this relatively unchecked mechanism in the context of new and controversial laws, such as the criminalization of nearly all abortions in Texas.
Well, it's obviously unconstitutional.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't expect the Supreme Court or anyone in government to agree with that position.
Right.
But obviously a search warrant has to be, specific, and these are the opposite of specific.
Right. They're the opposite. They're dragnet. It's fishing expedition.
Yeah. To just find people who were in a specific area at a given time, or the latest thing, to find people who had searched for specific things.
Mm-hmm. As long as the data exists, all it takes is a creative law enforcement officer to say, hey, can we get a warrant, or can we send a subpoena for this particular subset of the data that's already being harvested, said Caleb Kenyon, the defense attorney who represented McCoy to The Guardian. They're coming up with everything they can do to do their job. That's all it takes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Job.
I would. This is probably the prosecutor or whoever arguing this.
This is the defense attorney.
Oh.
Yeah. That's all it takes for the next type of reverse search warrant to come about. Dragnet search warrant. Lawyers such as Kenyon and privacy experts argue geofence and other broad warrants, such as those that ask companies to sift through keywords people searched, are akin to general warrant made illegal by the Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable searches and seizures. Unlike other kinds of search warrants, which are targeted and seek information about people who law enforcement has probable cause to believe has committed a specific crime, these warrants don't have any particular person in mind.
So, if everybody didn't already know this, stop using Google.
Yeah.
Don't look things up on Google. Don't store information on Google. Just avoid it at all costs.
If you must use Google to search for something, use startpage.com, which is an anonymous front end that searches Google for you and gives you the results without you having to go to Google, and they don't collect any data or anything like that. I used to use DuckDuckGo because it's, privacy friendly and all of that, but it's such a terrible search engine that I never got the results I was looking for. I just use StartPage. It gets you the Google results that are actually good.
Yeah. Without having to go through Google.
Yes. They go through Google for you.
Yeah. In other words, with reverse search warrants, law enforcement is still looking for their suspect, and they're asking tech companies to give them a list of people to investigate. For geofence warrants...
See, isn't that their job, the police's job, to create the list of people to investigate?
Through, evidence.
Yeah, and police work and, being a detective and all of that.
Mm-hmm. For geofence warrants, anyone in a certain place at a certain time becomes a suspect and a subject to further investigation, which could mean giving police even more of their user data. For keyword search warrants, another relatively new mechanism to obtain user information that has emerged. Anyone who searched for a certain phrase or address becomes a suspect. The latter is potentially more far-reaching than geofence warrants, Kenyon argues, because keyword search warrants are not necessarily geographically or tangibly tied to a specific crime and could make suspects out of people around the world who happen to search for specific terms. It's what I would frame as more of a true digital warrant without any ties or connections or tethers to the physical world.
Sounds horrifying.
Yeah, it does.
And of course, police love it, and the Supreme Court is going to say, no, this is totally constitutional, but it so clearly isn't.
Isn't this just so close to thought crime?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so much room for error. Like if they actually wanted to defend, like, oh no, this could do good for society and we can solve crimes with this. No, because I could give somebody my phone and they could go on a walk,
true.
you know? So it's like I don't always have my phone on me, or sometimes someone else can be looking stuff up, you know? So who knows? Like, how many times have you given a kid your phone and God knows what they're doing with it? You know, they're like looking at YouTube videos and all sorts of stuff. So
yeah, and I remember, I don't know if this is still the case because I'm such a hermit, but for a while when you signed up for Comcast, they would turn your router into a public hotspot for anyone else who had Comcast.
I didn't know about this.
I thought they did that for businesses. I didn't know they did that.
It for people. I had to call them and tell them, shut it off. I do not want that on my service.
I had no clue.
Yeah. This was years ago. I don't know if they still do. They probably still do it.
Probably.
I think they still do, but if you know how to disable it, I think you can go into the settings and disable it yourself.
Yeah. It wasn't like an opt-in, though. It was an automatic.
And they probably don't even tell people.
No, they don't.
Well, they must not, because I had no clue.
Yeah, they didn't tell anyone.
Did you use Spectrum? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
They didn't tell me either, but I always changed from the default settings. So when I used Spectrum, I saw that and got rid of it.
Yeah, as you should.
Yeah. It's like, no, thank you. I don't want random people using the internet that I pay for.
Well, yeah, and beyond that is the company is making money off of you. They're providing the service for free to all of its users.
But it's not for free. I'm the one paying the bill.
Right. Yeah. You're paying for it.
Yeah.
So privacy groups argue that tech companies bear responsibility in law enforcement's growing access to these types of data by developing new features that index user information in a way that makes it more searchable. One such feature is Apple's proposed child sexual abuse material detection function, which would analyze images to detect child sexual abuse images. So if I take a picture of my child, I
think Apple would flag that, if I remember correctly. We covered it when Apple first suggested it, and it would also cover the 16-year-old kids who were sending each other nudes or whatever. They would get charged with child pornography, thanks to Apple.
That's insane.
Oh my gosh.
Like a shirtless picture of my baby with yogurt all over her is going to get me flagged.
I think it probably would.
That's insane.
But I don't think they would pursue that legally. I don't recall. It's been so long since we talked about it.
I don't know. Then they could drag all my data and find out what else I've done.
That's true.
Unless you Googled Ron Paul.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about geofencing and these keyword search wars? Sounds horrifying to me. 603-283-6160.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agorist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agoristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agorist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agoristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agoristhosting.com.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. As always, you're invited to join us. Your thoughts and opinions are welcome. 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki, and Lori.
And obviously, correlation does not equal causation, but I am happy to report that within days of Free Talk Live beginning to promote liberty in our lifetime, they had sold out of physical tickets. You can only get digital tickets now for the event. It's being hosted by the Free Private Cities Foundation. You can get virtual tickets at lifetimeliberty.com. They are exploring projects happening right now around the world that are working to achieve the lofty goal of securing freedom in our lifetime. Speakers from Crypto Valley, Prospera, the Seasteading Institute, and more will be speaking at the October 16th event. And digital tickets are only $50, and they don't require a trip to Switzerland or Sweden or whichever one it was because, like I said, they sold out of physical tickets within days, so there was only like 2 days where I actually had to name the place that it was at, and now I don't remember. Get your digital tickets at lifetimeliberty.com and see what people are doing all around the world to create voluntary societies with a live and let live attitude at lifetimeliberty.com. Now we're talking about the power of basically Google here, and it's terrifying. I don't remember ever permanently turning on location tracking. Like ever, and my previous phone was significantly more secure than the one I'm using now. Now it's on, and it's on because I'm strangely doing a lot of traveling for someone who isn't really allowed to do a lot of traveling, so it's useful to have. But my old one, I never had that on, but I would still get monthly emails after about, I suppose it started in November of last year. I would get a monthly email saying, hey, these are all the places you've been. I was like, you shouldn't know that.
It's creepy.
I'm a dirty hippie, and I don't like to have phone service on my phone most of the time.
Nice.
I just use Wi-Fi everywhere I go. And I keep location shut off on my phone. But one day, when we were traveling across the country, I opened up my map, and it showed me exactly where I was on my map and followed me as we were driving.
Yeah.
No phone service, no location turned on. It's always watching, all the time. No matter what you think that you have protecting you from them not watching, they're still watching.
What was the name of the company that used to make the dedicated GPS devices?
Magellan?
No.
That's like way back in the day.
I've got to look into what they were called, but man, did they bet on the wrong horse. Because now we have dedicated GPS devices, on us in addition to all sorts of other things that are constantly updating. And updating one of those, because I used one back in the day, it was not very convenient.
Garmin? There were so many.
Garmin was one of them, yeah. So that sucked.
But at least then, it wasn't connected to the internet. It wasn't, as far as I'm aware, sending your location out to some centralized server to let the police know or whatever. Your cell phones are absolutely doing that. And even if you don't have location enabled,
even if you don't have service.
Well, I think if you don't have service, they can't find you.
No, that's what I'm saying. I had no service on my phone. I turned it on. The map was following me.
Yeah, like you literally did not have cell phone service, like not even downloaded on your phone.
Nope, no, like my phone was not
But you still had
turned
GPS service, which doesn't require actual data. It only requires data, I think, to update the map or whatever.
Like I had no phone service. I couldn't even use my phone.
Yeah.
Just
But I
no
don't think you need
phone
that for a
turned on.
GPS signal.
I have no idea.
I don't
Apparently
either.
not.
Apparently not.
But I know that like the Garmin devices, they didn't have, the ability
Yeah.
to make phone calls or send texts or use the internet or anything like that. And they could still...
Or give you directions properly.
Well, not even Google, really.
Yeah.
But they could still update your information even if you were out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So I imagine the GPS signal is different from the wireless signal. I don't know enough about that world to know. But anyway, it's scary.
Yeah.
And not to mention, all of these apps, if I even have a thought about something I may want to buy, I will get advertised it somehow. It's scary.
It is scary. Even I've thought things before, like not said it out loud at all, and I get an ad on my phone. I'm like, okay, cool. So they're reading my minds now too.
It's not because they're reading our minds, though. It's because they're just that good at learning about us and predicting things we may be interested in.
Mm-hmm.
That's the scary part. That's how well they know us, that they don't have to read our minds to know what we're going to think next. They just have data that they've plugged into algorithms, and the algorithms are smart enough to know, hey, at some point, Nikki's going to be interested in flip-flops. So here's an ad for flip-flops.
And it's almost just as bad as reading my mind.
Yeah. They're good. And it's useful.
It's worse.
I like the utility of it because I'm not getting served a bunch of ads for stuff I'm not interested in. But it also, they're too good. It causes me to spend more money online than I normally would because they show me exactly the stuff I'm interested in.
I've fallen victim. I admit I have fallen victim to this before. The Facebook ads. I'm like, ooh, that's a good one though.
Mine's all really weird stuff because it's all like, I don't use Facebook for anything but memes and groups. So it's all stuff like bathtub covers that you could like put your laptop on and sit inside your bathtub with just your head sticking out, weird stuff.
See, my concern, it's not really a concern, but my issue with this is that like Wish, Amazon, Facebook, Google, they're all communicating and sharing this data with one another. So Facebook knows exactly what sort of stuff I buy on Wish at Amazon, and Google knows the same thing. So when it comes time to serve me an ad, they're going to look at my purchase history and they're going to serve me an ad based on that. And I occasionally like to throw them off by just buying some random thing that for like $3 and I'm just going to throw it in the trash or whatever. But it doesn't work. They seem to know that that's not something I genuinely want. Like moments after getting a dog, moments after getting permission to look up stuff about having a dog, that's all my ads were for like a 2-week period. And I was like, look, I only needed one collar. You can stop serving me ads for collars, right? Because some of these things you only buy once.
Right.
Yeah,
like
consumerism, you're going to have to buy more than one.
You need them to match
eventually,
your outfits.
but that's because the dog is enormous and she's only getting bigger. And a small collar obviously isn't going to fit her long. But it's scary the amount of data that they're collecting, and it's scary how good they are at learning from that data and using it to predict things about us. There was a study done a number of years ago. I don't remember the details about it, but they looked through people's Facebook posts to determine the probability that they were going to be gay. And they had a pretty high success rate. And like 75% of the time they were right. Just looking at this person's posts. The language they used, the way they said things to determine
That's
whether or not
weird.
they were
That is
going
weird.
to come out.
And that's so strange because even the people who I can identify as either straight or gay, their Facebook posts to me like don't seem different. So the fact that they could find those subtleties in someone who hasn't even came out yet is crazy.
Yeah, but
that's weird.
I mean, if it was your job and you were dedicated to do that constantly and that was your only job, you could probably figure it out. If they could figure it out, because that's the AI's only job.
Yeah, maybe I also just like don't care.
Well, yeah, that too. Also,
I'm going to see if I can find that study because it was really interesting and it was a scarily high success rate. Oh, yep, this person is going to be gay. And like, I think it was 75% of the time the algorithm was right. I mean, we feed so much data into them unknowingly that they oftentimes know us better than we know ourselves.
I hate that.
Yeah. But there's nothing to really... I went out of my way for a few years, trying to keep these people from learning anything about me. Used Ghostery, which was an ad that blocked, which was an add-on that blocked all trackers, no script, ad blocks, all of that. And eventually I just gave up because it just wasn't worth it. They're going to get that data one way or the other. And if not, my mobile carrier will give it directly to them.
Oh, yeah.
603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
If you want to bring more liberty into your community, there's something you should see. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, break through. It's true. It's truly something new. If you'd like to see real prosperity, start your own currency, boost the economy. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, its impact's hard to overstate, results you can appreciate. If you're tired of relying on the state, want to make your own community great, homelessness and hunger to eliminate, let the wealth accumulate. Don't wait for the growth rate to accelerate. Go to intercoin.org and get the coins for yourself.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Rebecca Foster. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have struck an agreement in principle to host a virtual face-to-face summit later this year. The agreement was reached in talks on Wednesday between U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and top Chinese diplomat Yang Jiechi. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says details of the virtual summit have yet to be finalized.
What came out of the discussions was an agreement to continue dialogue at a very high level. So what we've said, of course, and we continue to believe, is that leader-level engagement is an important part of our effort to responsibly manage the competition with China, especially given the coalescing of power in Chinese leadership. We're still working through what that would look like, when, and, of course, the final details. So we don't quite have them yet.
The World Health Organization has approved the first ever malaria vaccine, recommending its widespread use among children in sub-Saharan Africa and other regions with high malaria cases. The recommendation is based on an ongoing pilot program in Kenya, Ghana, and Malawi that reached more than 800,000 children since 2019. FSN's Chris Ochemringa has that report.
The malaria vaccine recommended by the World Health Organization is called RTSS. Scientists say the vaccine acts against the most deadly form of malaria parasite globally and the most prevalent in Africa. It's the result of 30 years of research and development by British pharmaceutical firm GlaxoSmithKline, GSK. Malaria remains a primary cause of childhood illness and death in Africa. According to the WHO, 260,000 African children under the age of 5 die of malaria every year. The WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, has described the vaccine as a breakthrough for science, child health, and malaria control. More than 2.3 million doses of the vaccine have been administered in 3 African countries. Health experts say they've recorded good results.
The White House is set to spend $1 billion on in-home rapid COVID-19 tests. It expects this will quadruple the number of such tests available for Americans by December. Our U.S. correspondent Rachel Silverman has more.
This new investment builds on $2 billion the administration is using to boost production of a number of different COVID-19 tests. It comes after an increase in demand driven by the Delta variant, which strained the nation's supply of rapid at-home tests. The White House is also planning to double the number of pharmacies participating in the government's free testing program to 20,000. The U.S. has lagged behind several European and Asian countries in testing.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where you can watch us live stream over at video.freetalklive. That's our Odyssey channel, because the writing's on the wall. It's inevitable. YouTube is ultimately going to delete our channel. We're probably going to eventually get kicked off Facebook and Twitter and all of these other major tech platforms as well. So we're doing things to keep our content there, even if all of these other things do come to pass. That's video.freetalklive.com. It's built on Library, which is a media sharing protocol that is decentralized. It's sort of like BitTorrent, except it's built on blockchain technology. So it's really awesome, and it means that once people start downloading your content in order to view it, it's there forever. Or if you're hosting your own content, it's there forever. You can't be deleted. You can't be censored. No one can ever destroy your content or prohibit anyone from accessing it. Odyssey is a bit different. It's a web-based front end that accesses the library network, but it also offers a streaming service, and it's really blowing up. There's more than 1 million creators over there at Odyssey now. So check us out at video.freetalklive.com. That's video.freetalklive.com. We also have Major Payne calling from Michigan. Major Payne, you're on Free Talk Live.
Good evening. Thank you. Yeah, there was a bunch of hoorah down at the Texas border here today. There was a school shooting. I want to pretext the whole thing with that. And the governor down there invited another bunch of governors, probably Arizona and all the other bordering states there, to a conference on how to plug the hole in the wall, which is the border leak. And like I said, unbeknownst to him, there was a school shooting. So he made a brief comment about that. And one of the CNN reporters, I'm assuming that's
You're kind of fading out there, Major Payne.
What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have it close enough to my mouth, I guess.
That's much better. Thank you.
One of the reporters took the whole thing out of context and tried to play it off as he had called the whole meeting to deal with school issues and shootings and such, and he had called the meeting to deal with the border.
Anyway, I mean, sure, but if you're a governor and you call a meeting and there's a school shooting during that meeting, I think it's prudent to change the subject and start talking about school shootings.
Well, he mentioned it, but there was very little info. I mean, he touched on it and, tried to move on, but the reporter put the whole thing out falsely, and took in bits and pieces, as they do, and tried to say that he had avoided the whole pretext of the interview, and the pretext of the interview was to deal with the school shootings, and it was to deal with the border. He had 7 governors already invited. This has all been,
what?
It was false fake news.
I mean, sure, but I mean, the media always does that. I mean, the fact that the media lies is itself not really newsworthy.
We're right back to the Wizard of Oz. Beware of the man behind the curtain. In case you haven't noticed, every week there's a new crazy little ditty that gets holes blowed in it as soon as there's any light, like the Haitians getting whipped by the border guards with their horse reins. You notice that's gone because it was horse feathers.
Well, they were chasing people down in horses. I believe some media outlets...
They were chasing them down, but they were using the reins to control the animals. I've ridden horses many times.
Yeah, I mean, some people on Twitter or whatever probably blew it out of proportion. But, I mean, honestly, still, that's not any better. To have Border Patrol chasing people down on horseback, that's not any better.
The author of the photograph took it from an angle where he had the horse. He was looking at the rump of the horse. He had the sun advantage. I mean, it was a beautiful picture, and the Haitian was in front of him. He was running.
That sounds like a disgusting picture, not a beautiful one.
Well, I'm talking about the overlay of the sun and whatnot. Photographically, it was brilliant.
Okay.
But all you saw was the shadow of the rain and the man in front of him. You couldn't get the depth to see if the man was actually being whipped.
You're fading out again there, Major Payne.
And the author of the photograph said, no, nobody was whipped. This man was running.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. I mean, people saw the picture and they thought they saw the man being whipped, so they took that and ran with it. And no amount of the photographer or anyone else saying otherwise is going to convince those people that didn't happen.
Well, there's an old adage that you have to live by. Never assume. because it makes an ass out of you and me.
Yeah, that's what they say.
All right. Yeah, beware of the man behind the curtain, because there's a new thing to distract us from the real thing every week.
Oh, absolutely.
Beware.
Thank you so. So I didn't mean to cut you off while you were saying that again. I assumed that was the end of your sentence, but absolutely. And thank you for the call tonight, Major Payne. We got criticized on one of these streaming services that we stream to for not talking about the stupid murder that happened when some married couple went on a trail hike or something.
Oh, Gabby Petito. Yeah.
Yeah, because every single other person is talking about it, and there are other things that are more. I mean, I don't want to say that that's not relevant, but if
it's not at all. Oh no, a 20-something-year-old blonde chick was murdered.
Yep.
The media took that and ran with them. Okay, let's talk about the oppression that the government is currently doing. Let's talk about Australia.
How many people are murdered in this country every day?
Yeah.
But a lot.
I don't know the number.
It's a lot.
But it's a lot more than this one chick who
Right.
covered the news headlines for like 2 solid weeks.
And it's also like if every single other news source is reporting on this or news outlet or whatever, why would we talk about it too if everybody else is already talking about it?
Get on the bandwagon.
Yeah, no thanks.
Well, ideally, we offer a different perspective from most of these news sources, but that's not really a story that anyone here is particularly moved by or interested in.
And there's no real other perspective other than she was probably killed by her boyfriend. Like, that's the whole thing.
So, and what resolution is going to come from that?
Right.
Yeah. So this is the most I think has been discussed at any point in the show, and we're not really discussing it, but talking about the reasons why it's not really worth discussing. But it did for like 2 weeks. So it's just all people were talking about in the media. It's like, why does anyone care about this? Oh, it's because it was
white woman syndrome.
Yeah, this white blonde chick got murdered.
Mm-hmm. That's what it's actually called, white woman syndrome.
Is it?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a phenomenon where, white, blonde, young, attractive women who are murdered get all of the spotlight for 2 weeks, and then thousands of other people are dying at the same time and no one cares.
Yeah, I heard families actually using her hashtag to promote their missing family members.
That's sad.
That's clever.
Yeah. Oh, and
But
also sad.
It's sad that
it's sad that they have to do that. Yeah.
But I mean, the media can't talk about every single murder that happens, which is why I just sort of prefer them not to talk about any of them unless they're especially notable.
Mm-hmm.
But a woman going on a vacation with her husband or whatever and then not coming back and then the dude goes into hiding, that's not newsworthy. That's the kind of thing that happens all the time in the United States.
Yep.
But it doesn't get news coverage because not a pretty young white chick with blonde hair.
Right.
So anyway, we were talking about keyword warrants and search warrants and other ways that the government can find out about us. Actually, we got distracted last segment and talked about how good advertising is. And the two things are kind of related because Google is certainly one of these key players in the advertising world. Mm-hmm. And they're also one of the ones who know exactly where we're at most of the time. So does Apple, of course. Apple at least has a slightly better history of resisting warrants and, requests from police, but it's not much better. And they'll ultimately all give them what they want. So the more we can do to limit what information is actually in the hands of these companies, the better. But there's more of this article, right?
Yeah, there's more. This is, again, from The Guardian. So it goes on to say, from our position, creating more vulnerabilities on our devices that can be abused, whether by authoritarian governments or by law enforcement or hackers, doesn't make anyone safer, said Caitlin Seeley-George, the director of campaigns and operations at Fight for the Future, which organized a protest outside Apple stores in 11 cities to pressure the company into abandoning its plans for the future.
Did it work?
I don't know. Probably not.
Well, hopefully they do abandon those plans, but yeah, I think they probably won't either. I dread to think, what could happen if police could actually just see what everyone is searching for all the time. But this is the first step to that. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party. The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where you can take control of the airwaves and talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160. That's the call-in line if you want to do that. 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Lori.
And we've been talking about big data here and really just the problems that it's causing, because it's provided just an enormous new web of information for police officers to use. Obviously unconstitutionally, but getting the Supreme Court or someone else to agree on that is going to be rather difficult, because they tend not to side on the side of Bill of Rights when it comes to what the government can and can't do. Obviously, 9/11, the Patriot Act was unconstitutional, but that didn't stop them from allowing it. And the mandate, the Obamacare mandate within the Affordable Care Act, obviously unconstitutional, but again, the Supreme Court upheld it. So we can't count on the Supreme Court to actually recognize how absolutely violating this is of our natural rights.
Mm-hmm.
But now police are using geofence warrants, which I believe were part of the whole reason that the colonies rebelled against the British in the first place, because the British used general warrants, say, hey, we're searching this entire neighborhood or whatever, which is exactly what a geofence warrant is, and that's what the police are now using. And they're also now expanding that into keyword search warrants, where they tell Google, hey, we want to know who searched for these combination of things. Give us that information. And Google is turning it over.
Mm-hmm. And addresses and just anything. Say I'm Googling how to get somewhere, and then that place gets robbed. Now I'm a suspect.
Also true. Yeah. It's scary to think, but that's what they're doing.
Yeah. So for communities being disproportionately targeted by law enforcement surveillance based on the color of their skin, their religion, their home country, this is adding more fodder. Information vulnerability. The normalization of these mechanisms is particularly worrying as controversial laws such as the Texas abortion ban are being passed, privacy advocate Albert Fox Kahn, the founder of the Surveillance Technology Oversight Project, said. While Texas laws don't allow public officials to sue abortion providers for those who help, it doesn't prohibit them from aiding private citizens who do. You could use a pretext to get a reverse search warrant targeting an abortion provider's location using literally any other law on the books. Then provide that information to the activists, Kahn said. And it's getting easier. A company called Hawk Analytics offers services that purport to put together Google geofence warrants in just a few clicks. In one webinar hosted exclusively for law enforcement, the company said it would walk attendees through everything Google, including what's available, how to get it, and what to do with it, with the emphasis on Google geofence reverse location returns.
So there's a company making it easier for police to get geofence and keyword warrants.
Mm-hmm. In just a few clicks.
Just a few clicks, yeah.
Magic.
You would hope that there would be some sort of process where a judge has to sign off on something or,
More than just a few clicks?
Yeah.
Oh, I imagine there's like a little clippy, like in Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
Are you trying to do a dragnet fishing expedition for criminals?
Well, they would obviously click no to that because they're never going to admit that. But yes, that's absolutely what they're doing.
Clippy keeps your secrets, though.
That's true.
Without specifying how many, a Google spokesperson, Genevieve Park, said the company had challenged many overly broad government requests. We use a rigorous process designed to honor our legal obligations while narrowing the scope of data disclosed, Park said in a statement.
Yeah, I have absolutely no reason to trust Google when they say that.
No. Or anything.
They took "don't be evil" out of their motto a long time ago.
Yeah, so now they can be evil and it's okay.
Yes. That to me it's still one of the worst things I've ever heard of a company doing, because they used to have their number one policy was don't be evil. And then at some point they took that out.
Yeah. I didn't know about that.
Maybe someday someone will hack them and make a new tagline for "whoops, we're evil."
I think they had 7 actual guidelines. I don't know what to call them.
7 commandments of Google.
Tenets. I don't know what the word would be, but they had, I think it was 7 of them. And the very first one was don't be evil.
Mission statements, right? Mission statements.
It may have been a mission. Yeah. And at some point within the last 5 years or so, they're like, yeah, we're going to get rid of that.
Yeah.
And you would think that when they did that, just the entire world would just stop using Google products. Like, okay, here's a company that didn't want to be evil. And they're like, hey, yeah, not being evil is holding us back.
Yeah.
In order to move ahead, we have to be evil. And I don't know. I'm still using Google services. But I also know that they're evil. I don't know if that's good or bad.
It's kind of funny that they felt the need to take it out because they could have just left it there, but they were like, "Yeah, nobody's gonna buy this. We're gonna have to take that out."
But they did. They had it, and then they got rid of it.
They make it hard not to use their services.
They really do. Yeah,
they're everywhere. Everything is Google, Gmail,
YouTube.
Then there's Facebook, which has Instagram.
Yeah, and WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Well, I don't use any of those. I use Facebook.
I don't know who has Snapchat. Somebody else.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think Snapchat refused to sell to Facebook, so they tried creating their Snapchat copycat that was Facebook Stories or whatever, and I don't think anyone cares about it.
No, I don't think so.
And of course, TalkTick killed them. The TikTok, not TalkTick. That's weird. I've never said TalkTick before. That's difficult to say as well. But anyway, TikTok killed them, and I think they also weren't interested in selling, but they're owned by a Chinese company or something anyway. So
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So they don't dominate the world, but they certainly want to. And Facebook never had "Don't be evil" in its motto.
They were evil from the beginning.
Yeah.
It's not just major tech players like Google and Facebook that are targets, however. Personal information in the hands of smaller companies that may not have the resources or wherewithal to withstand sweeping warrants is just as vulnerable, Khan said. You could subpoena period tracker apps to provide any users who apparently became pregnant during any given time period, for example, he said.
I have to think they would have a hard time, but they don't even have to justify it, do they?
They could say, we're looking for people who are flouting the abortion ban in Texas, or there was a baby found in an alley. Let's find out everybody who missed their period this month in the city.
How do they know if that resulted in a pregnancy, or it just doesn't, like, so I could get arrested just for having my period because they think I got an abortion? That makes no sense.
I guess you can get arrested just because somebody said you got an abortion, whether or not you did now. Or
I
you
guess
get
they don't even really have to prove it, right?
I don't think so. What are they going to prove?
Well, the thing about the abortion Texas law is that it's not an arrestable offense. It's not a criminal offense. It's a civil offense.
Mm-hmm.
So someone has to sue you, and they sue you for $10,000, and in the court they would have to prove that you had an abortion or whatever.
What if I refuse to pay or go to court?
Well, at that point you would go to jail.
Right.
But they would argue that that's for refusing to pay the fine and not for having the abortion. Or to refusing to pay the person, because it's not a fine. You're paying that person, that busybody, that Karen, who decided to sue you over having an abortion.
It's loopholes, though.
Yeah.
Then you're really going to jail for somebody who said you had an abortion or helped someone get an abortion or whatever.
Yeah. So just get the hell out of Texas.
Yeah. This information is flowing to so many different companies and vendors. Even if you get one company trying to protect your location data, you have so many more points of vulnerability in the commercial market than a decade ago, Khan said. All it takes is one company to give up that information without a fight, or more often than not sell it. While there is legislation in the works that would impose safeguards on those means of getting hold of vast swaths of sensitive location data, such as cell site simulators, and the outright sale of that information, there isn't currently a publicly known congressional effort to do the same for geofence warrants.
Well, I don't want government to do anything about this. It's mostly a problem that government has created.
Yeah.
In and of itself, I don't mind Facebook and Google knowing stuff about me to serve me better ads. It's the fact that I know they'll turn that information over to police that I have a problem with.
It's not even that they sell it. That's the agreement you make when you get a free service, is they're getting something out of you.
Yeah.
That's fine. You want to sell my data. But just
I
don't
have
sell
no
it to the
objection to
cops.
that. Yes. And don't get it.
That's where we draw the line.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it benefits me in many ways for them to know more about me to serve me better ads. If Spotify hadn't been able to learn anything about me, it wouldn't have served me some of the bands that I didn't even know existed prior to this year and who are now some of my favorite bands.
That's a good point.
So it's beneficial as long as they don't talk to cops.
Yeah.
So Facebook, just stop talking to cops.
Yeah.
Google, stop talking to cops. It
They
never
won't.
helps.
In the meantime, the onus is on state and local jurisdictions not to issue overbroad warrants and on tech companies to fight off those warrants.
It's on police not
We're
to
safe.
abuse their powers. I've never felt safer.
For tech companies that count advertising among their revenue streams or as major source of revenue, as is the case for Google, there's no real technical solution to curbing government requests for their data. It would be technically impossible to have this data available to advertisers in a way that police couldn't buy it, subpoena, or take it with a warrant.
Unless you made a law preventing the police from doing that, which in theory would work. What are your thoughts? Do you think Facebook, Google, all of these companies should be standing up to the police or just giving them whatever they want because they're just trying to defend that thin blue line? 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. UCI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Rebecca Foster. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have struck an agreement in principle to host a virtual face-to-face summit later this year. The agreement was reached in talks on Wednesday between U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and top Chinese diplomat Yang Jiechi. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says details of the virtual summit have yet to be finalized.
What came out of the discussions was an agreement to continue dialogue at a very high level. So what we've said, of course, and we continue to believe, is that leader-level engagement is an important part of our effort to responsibly manage the competition with China, especially given the coalescing of power in Chinese leadership. We're still working through what that would look like, when, and, of course, the final details. So we don't quite have them yet.
The World Health Organization has approved the first ever malaria vaccine, recommending its widespread use among children in sub-Saharan Africa and other regions with high malaria cases. The recommendation is based on an ongoing pilot program in Kenya, Ghana, and Malawi that reached more than 800,000 children since 2019. FSN's Chris Ochemringa has that report.
The malaria vaccine recommended by the World Health Organization is called RTSS. Scientists say the vaccine acts against the most deadly form of malaria parasite globally and the most prevalent in Africa. It's the result of 30 years of research and development by British pharmaceutical firm GlaxoSmithKline, GSK. Malaria remains a primary cause of childhood illness and death in Africa. According to the WHO, 260,000 African children under the age of 5 die of malaria every year. The WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, has described the vaccine as a breakthrough for science, child health, and malaria control. More than 2.3 million doses of the vaccine have been administered in 3 African countries. Health experts say they've recorded good results.
The White House is set to spend $1 billion on in-home rapid COVID-19 tests. It expects this will quadruple the number of such tests available for Americans by December. Our U.S. correspondent Rachel Silverman has more.
This new investment builds on $2 billion the administration is using to boost production of a number of different COVID-19 tests. It comes after an increase in demand driven by the Delta variant, which strained the nation's supply of rapid at-home tests. The White House is also planning to double the number of pharmacies participating in the government's free testing program to 20,000. The U.S. has lagged behind several European and Asian countries in testing.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at Expo 2020, the delayed global exposition which has just opened in Dubai. Postponed because of COVID-19, it showcases individual country pavilions that demonstrate the latest inventions with a focus on cutting-edge architecture, green technology, and the organisers say a vibrant glimpse of our interconnected tomorrows. The Israeli pavilion opens today, a fresh demonstration of the new relationship between the country and the UAE. But Expo 2020 attracted a fair amount of criticism as well, according to analyst Bob McMahon with the New York-based Council on Foreign Relations.
Foreign workers have built this World's Fair. The treatment of foreign workers is a source of huge controversy in human rights circles. You also have sort of broader concerns about the UAE and its crackdown on dissidents and others who speak out on rights issues. The European Parliament actually just this month urged nations not to take part in the expo. I guess you would say it's an event that is it's supposed to have a big world footprint, it's supposed to put countries on the map and also be an innovative showcase, but also tend to attract criticisms and sort of political statements, not unlike the Olympics that we've seen recently.
Should you be in Dubai, Expo 2020 will remain open for the next 6 months. It's cost an estimated $7 billion to mount, and the UAE is hoping that 25 million visitors will explore its pavilions and halls. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the top news again. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have agreed in principle to host a virtual face-to-face summit later this year. The World Health Organization has approved the first-ever malaria vaccine, recommending its widespread use among children in sub-Saharan Africa. And the White House is set to spend $1 billion on in-home rapid COVID-19 tests. And that's the latest feature story news. Rebecca Foster reporting.
Saying that a few images of displaced refugees would probably do the trick, Americans admitted this week that they could probably be talked into another war. Citizens nationwide told reporters that if they were to see a blurry satellite image of potential nuclear weapons or footage of an evil militant group, they could easily see themselves getting on board with another major military effort.
I'm not saying I'd be gung-ho about it right away, but if they called it something like a concentrated military operation or something other than war at first, I could see myself warming up to the idea. Honestly, just hearing a top official on TV say something like patriotic duty might clinch it.
And in this week's op-ed pages, an area man finds it's just his luck to lose thousands at the blackjack tables every night for the past few weeks. In other news, a senator tries submitting a rejected bill to the Canadian Parliament. What mom would have wanted is evolving over the course of funeral planning, and a new report finds you're actually saving money with a Franklin Skate Center roller rink membership.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, the show that allows you to call in and share your opinions and talk about whatever is important to you. You can do that by calling 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki, and Lori.
And earlier we were talking about lines because there was a lot about the Kentucky Festival that I found fascinating. But one of the more fascinating things was the fact that when we arrived, we saw just this massive line of people. Now, for those who don't know, the festival that we were at in Louisville has a maximum capacity of like a few hundred thousand people, I think. It's 5 miles across. It is an enormous fairground and expo center. So I think the line was probably closer to a mile long, I would guess, because it wrapped around the building, and that was at least a quarter mile, maybe half a mile away. And it was moving so slowly. We had VIP tickets, so we assumed that was just the general check-in line. So we're like, okay, whatever that line is, it has nothing to do with us. And we just walked right by it versus all of the other people who went and stood in line properly, not even knowing what the line was for. It was just a line, so they stood in it. And there was also this large field there, right? At the second day, we realized we could just cut across the field and cut the travel distance in half because that's how triangles generally work. And we could either go way down straight and then take a left, or we could just cut across the field. So we started doing that. And again, no one ever said anything to us about it. But once we started doing it, other people started following. They were like, oh, that's actually really smart. I don't have to take the long way, but still, people always stood in that line. If people saw a line, they stood in it.
Well, and that's human nature too, right? People don't feel comfortable being the first person to do something.
Yeah. And you had mentioned that earlier, which got me thinking about it and looking into it. One of the suggestions they had about this line experiment was to stand at a beach looking out into the ocean. And when someone was within earshot, say, hey, did you see that whale? And then, move over a few feet and then point out there and say, there it is again. And eventually this person will also see the whale.
Yeah. Or pretend to, at least.
Well, they may convince themselves that they see the whale. Or they will pretend to. You're more correct. And eventually you can end up with a large crowd of people claiming to see this whale that doesn't exist. And there have been psychological experiments done about this, and that's what I want to talk about now. It was done by Solomon Asch. He conducted an experiment to investigate the extent to which social pressure from a majority group could affect a person to conform. He believed that the main problem with Sheriff's 1935 conformity experiment was that there was no correct answer to the ambiguous. I don't know what they're even talking about here, and they don't provide any explanation whatsoever. So Asch devised what is now regarded as a classic experiment in social psychology, whereby there was an obvious answer to a line judgment task. I think I know what he's talking about with Sheriff's thing. It was about how far a dot moved in the darkness or something like that. So it was really ambiguous. You have no reference point to judge, and they had plants who were saying, no, it moved 3 feet or whatever. And without any reference point, the person couldn't really be sure of their answer. I think that was the Sheriff experiment. But here they just gave 3 different size lines, and they asked which one is the longest. If the participant gave an incorrect answer, it would be clear that this was due to group pressure because the answer is obvious. It's really easy to tell which of 3 lines is longest. So he got 50 male students from a college to participate in a vision test. Using a line judgment task, Asch put a naive participant in a room with 7 stooges. They had agreed in advance what their responses would be when presented with the line task, and they were always to give incorrect answers. The real participant did not know that and was led to believe that the other 7 people were also real participants like themselves. Each person in the room had to state aloud which comparison line was most like the target line. That's like, here's the line, so which one of these is most like it? And it's the only difference between them is size. The real participant sat at the end of the row and gave their answer last. There were a total of 18 trials, and the Confederates gave the wrong answer on 12 trials, which were called the critical trials. Asch was interested to see if the real participant would conform to the majority view. They also used a control where there were no Confederates and only 1 real participant. Asch measured the number of times each participant conformed to the majority view. On average, about 1/3 of the participants who were placed in the situation went along and conformed with the clearly incorrect majority on the clinical trials. So even though they knew they were giving the wrong answer, because everyone else was giving the wrong answer, they also gave the wrong answer. Over the 12 critical trials, about 75% of participants conformed at least once, and 25% of participants never conformed at all, which is higher than I would have expected it to be, really. 25% of people resisting peer pressure seems kind of high to me. So in the control group, with no pressure to conform, less than 1% of participants gave the incorrect answer. So why did the participants conform so readily? When they were interviewed after the experiment, most of them said they did not really believe their conforming answers, but had gone along with the group for fear of being ridiculed or thought peculiar.
Wow.
So they knowingly gave the wrong answer, and they were just worried about, being ridiculed for being correct.
See, I'm not like that. I'm like, I was the one person that was right. You guys are all wrong.
Yeah.
That's probably why we're libertarians, though, is because we have the capacity to say, hey, no, you're wrong.
Yeah, well, that's, the social conditioning doesn't work on everyone. That's us.
I guess so.
Alarmingly, a few of them said that they really did believe the group's answers were correct. So they were able to convince themselves that they were wrong and the group was actually right.
And I think that's a self-esteem thing. I think a lot of people don't trust their own knowledge and their own intelligence. So they're like, you know what? If everybody else is saying that, it must be right.
I don't understand that. If you can see that it's very visibly wrong, how do you convince yourself that it's right?
they trust other people's judgment more than their own.
Wow.
Apparently, people conform for two main reasons: because they want to fit in with the group, and because they believe the group is better informed than they are. One limitation of the study is that it used a biased sample. All the participants were male students who all belong to the same age group. This means that the study lacks population validity and that the results cannot be generalized to females or older groups of people. But I'm almost positive someone has repeated this experiment with a wider range of participants, and I imagine it's true across the board. Another problem is that the experiment used an artificial task to measure conformity, judging line lengths. How often are we faced with making a judgment like the one Ash used, where the answer is plain to see? Well, that was the point of the sheriff experiment, if I recall correctly. The answer was not obvious, but people still conformed to the group, and I think the results were largely the same in that experiment. I don't know. It was many years ago where I watched a YouTube video about this topic. This means that the study has low ecological validity, and the results cannot be generalized to other real-life situations of conformity. It absolutely can, though, and we see it right now with COVID-19 and the insane mandates and mask nonsense, where people continue to support all of it because they don't want to be peculiar. People are putting on their masks because they don't want to be peculiar. Maybe they don't believe what they've heard about the mask. I mean, there's no actual science to support wearing masks as a method of preventing the spread of COVID-19, but everyone else believes it, and they can't all be wrong, right? So we've seen these effects happening right now, and with the vaccines as well. Everyone says the vaccines work. Well, the media actually says exactly the opposite. They just also throw in there the line that the vaccine totally works, and for whatever reason, people ignore all of the data that the media just provided about how you can still get and spread COVID-19 and still get hospitalized and still die.
And they throw so much guilt in there, too. You know, you don't want to be the one person that's not wearing a mask, and it's like, oh, you're spreading COVID-19, or you clearly don't care about the community. You know, you don't care about the children or the elderly. So there's so much guilt that people are just afraid to receiving that. And we even saw it when they lifted the mask mandates. It took like a week for like almost everybody to stop wearing them. And I was like, what is so different from yesterday? You know, like, so I was like a murderous savage yesterday for not wearing a mask in Walmart, but today it's perfectly fine. Like, what changed?
Well, what changed is that the government decided they were no longer necessary, and surely government knows best, right?
Surely.
As far as I can tell, that's the only thing that changed. But you're right. Even the day after, the number of people wearing masks just plummeted. But within a week, it was almost no one. Some people are wearing them again, I've seen.
Yep.
What are your thoughts? Are people just conforming blindly to what other people are saying? It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it.
Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover springs her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Uncovering the secrets and exposing the lies. That's what the readers of FreedomsPhoenix.com get every day. FreedomsPhoenix.com, constantly providing the information, the real news about government policies, and the real relationship we all have with the coercive government. The real condition of the economy, innovations in technology, breakthroughs in energy, health, and computer science. Learn the truth well before it's admitted to in the lamestream media. The corporate media, nothing more than distributors of government propaganda, but now there's an alternative. FreedomsPhoenix.com. Constant news updates on the issues that affect your life in the most important ways. With liberty and property under constant attack, FreedomsPhoenix.com provides the understanding behind the propaganda, and it encourages the participation of its readers. Go to FreedomsPhoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, Phoenix.com. FreedomsPhoenix.com. The revolution between the ears has already happened.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where last year we told you about Intercoin. And now they can help any business and organization launch their own currency or raise money worldwide using their own token. So if there's a token you want to launch or an app you want to build, go to intercoin.org, enter your email, and the team there will get in touch with you and learn about your needs. And while you're there, pick up some Intercoins for yourself. That's intercoin.org, I-N-T-E-R, coin.org. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Nikki,
and Lori.
And Nikki, you have a story, an interesting story about a doctor.
I do.
Who is talking about vaccine side effects.
Yes, so this is a translated excerpt from an interview with an Italian ambulance doctor who responds to 911 calls.
So they use actual doctors in their ambulances there?
I guess so. I was surprised too, because we do not do that in the United States. We have medics or EMTs, and then they'll transport patients to the hospitals, but they can only do like very emergency medicine stuff. So they're very limited in their scope of practice of what they can do. So it's actually kind of cool that they use doctors in
it sounds like
Italy.
it would be better.
Yeah, it does sound like it would be better, because then you can it would reduce the amount of hospital admissions. But
true.
where the way the U.S. hospital system is set up, and healthcare and insurance, the way insurance is set up, they want more hospital admissions in the U.S. So from what I understand, it's different in Italy, the way hospitals get paid and everything. So the interview goes on to say, so they're asking the doctor, are you saying that 7 out of 10 fragile people who suffer the adverse side effects of the so-called anti-COVID vaccines die from them? Exactly.
What do they mean by fragile people, did they say?
I think they probably mean like elderly people, like frail, like weak or sickly people.
And the question was, do 7 out of 10 of these people die from the COVID-19 vaccines?
Suffer from the adverse effects of the COVID vaccine. Oh, no, yes. Do 7 out of 10 people who suffer from the adverse effects of the COVID vaccines die?
Okay.
So out of all the people that are experiencing side effects, how many of them die? So, and this Italian doctor is saying that 7 out of 10 of these people are dying, which honestly, from what I'm seeing in the United States, does not surprise me, which is terrible.
Aren't you not supposed to get a vaccine if you're sick anyway?
Yes, that's generally how most vaccines work. I know they'll use a different kind of vaccines. So they'll use vaccines that don't have the live virus in them. So technically the mRNA vaccines don't, but where it's literally editing your DNA, and not only that, where it's such new medical technology, it's just it hasn't been tested enough to give it to these frail, weak people, elderly people, or children.
Aren't these mRNA, I can never say it, vaccines supposed to like kick your immune system into gear like it's fighting it?
Yes, but it's kind of doing the opposite.
Yeah, but
what they do
if they're
is
supposed to do that and you're already sick, isn't that going to just make you sicker?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they program your cells to create the spike protein that surrounds COVID-19's cells.
Mm-hmm.
And then your body knows, hey, these are foreign. Let's attack and destroy these spike proteins. And by doing so, they attack and destroy COVID-19 in theory. But the idea of having your body programmed by a vaccine to produce a certain type of cell seems to me like a bad idea.
And to expose someone to that while they're already sick.
Or pregnant.
Yeah, or pregnant.
Or nursing, or having recently...
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having multiple comorbidities or, you know.
Yeah, it's an overall bad idea, but for some reason, it seems like every government in the world is pushing this on people. Like, every single person, no matter what your condition is, has to get this, or else you can't do X, A, B, and C, or X, Y, and Z, you know?
So I know there are some vaccines too that you can't get if you're allergic to certain things or if you have certain conditions. Are there
they have ways around that.
Are there any of those for, like, I know I have eczema, so I can't get the smallpox vaccine. Like, I know that one. Is there any of those for COVID? The COVID vaccine?
Not that they're admitting.
No.
I'm sure there are several.
There must
But
be.
even like the flu shot, so they use eggs in the flu shot. So if you have an egg allergy, you can't get the flu shot.
Right.
Oh, well, they made a different one. So there's always ways that they are getting around this, which in the case of a flu shot, that could be a good thing if somebody wants to get the flu shot, but they're allergic to eggs.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, they're kind of using it as, oh, well, some people were using it as an excuse. Like, I could say, like, oh, I'm vegan, so I can't get the flu shot. And that could maybe be like a little bit of an excuse because I just don't want to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But then they're like, nope, we have this other one for you and you can still get it. So it's kind of like a backhanded way at forcing people to do things that they don't want to and limiting the amount of excuses people can have.
Okay.
My excuse is just, I don't want it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that apparently doesn't work.
Well, you work in healthcare.
Yes.
So I don't.
Yeah, so apparently that's not going to work for... Well, I could do a medical or a religious exemption, but they are being very limited with what they're accepting. And this after that, I would have to wear an N95 mask all the time, which is so unhealthy for you. I mean, wearing a surgical mask for 8 to 16 hours a day is really, really bad for you. Never mind an N95, which is literally suction cupped to your face. I had to do that in the beginning of COVID when I was working in the COVID unit at a nursing home, and I had blisters on my nose because I was working 70 hours a week wearing this N95 mask.
Okay.
One of the things that frustrated me, let me get this out there real quick before I forget again, is that you had all these surgeons who talked about, well, wearing a mask isn't that bad. Just like, dude, you make $300,000 a year. Yeah. I would wear a mask if I was making the kind of money you're making. The person working here at the convenience store, they're not making that.
So they say the masks protect other people from you, right?
They initially said that, but they changed it.
But an N95 mask doesn't work like that. It actually protects you from the outside air and expels particles. So why would they make you wear an N95 mask?
No, it works both ways for the N95. So I'm protecting them and they're protecting me.
I thought
it's protecting me from other people.
I thought it was the filter came in and it vented out your breath.
There is
not
type
not
of mask,
N95s.
but I don't remember exactly what it was. One of the few good things I can say about Keene is that in their mask ordinance, or their mask mandate, they actually did say that those types of masks weren't allowed.
Yeah, and on airplanes, they're not allowed either because I had one with a filter on it. It was like an open vent that I tried to wear on the airplane, and they made me change it to a surgical mask, which I'm allergic to, by the way.
So yours had like an open vent? It wasn't like a
but there was
filter?
also a filter. There was a filter slip that I would change in and out of it.
Okay.
So
And they wouldn't let you do that?
Nope, they wouldn't let me on the airplane with it. But don't you worry, they had surgical masks there ready for me.
Oh, I'm sure they did. Yeah.
So moving on with the article, the doctor goes on to say, so when asked if 7 out of 10 fragile people who suffer from adverse effects are dying from them, the doctor says, exactly. We can say that these vaccines are making a clean sweep of all the fragile. Now I bring you an example from the last hospitalization I did. We went to the home of a person who already had various ailments, heart disease, chronic obstruction bronchitis for years, and was nevertheless vaccinated with a double dose. The latter disease, COPD, in medical jargon, flared up after the administration of the vaccination. The patient had 88% oxygen saturation accompanied by strange tonic-clonic shocks, which is seizures.
We're going to get more into this because this doctor sounds like he's seeing some interesting stuff that, just isn't really being talked about anywhere else. So stay tuned, 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in. That's 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Rebecca Foster. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have struck an agreement in principle to host a virtual face-to-face summit later this year. The agreement was reached in talks on Wednesday between U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and top Chinese diplomat Yang Jiechi. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says details of the virtual summit have yet to be finalized.
What came out of the discussions was an agreement to continue dialogue at a very high level. So what we've said, of course, and we continue to believe, is that leader-level engagement is an important part of our effort to responsibly manage the competition with China, especially given the coalescing of power in Chinese leadership. We're still working through what that would look like, when, and, of course, the final details. So we don't quite have them yet.
The World Health Organization has approved the first ever malaria vaccine, recommending its widespread use among children in sub-Saharan Africa and other regions with high malaria cases. The recommendation is based on an ongoing pilot program in Kenya, Ghana, and Malawi that reached more than 800,000 children since 2019. FSN's Chris Ochemringa has that report.
The malaria vaccine recommended by the World Health Organization is called RTSS. Scientists say the vaccine acts against the most deadly form of malaria parasite globally and the most prevalent in Africa. It's the result of 30 years of research and development by British pharmaceutical firm GlaxoSmithKline, GSK. Malaria remains a primary cause of childhood illness and death in Africa. According to the WHO, 260,000 African children under the age of 5 die of malaria every year. The WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, has described the vaccine as a breakthrough for science, child health, and malaria control. More than 2.3 million doses of the vaccine have been administered in 3 African countries. Health experts say they've recorded good results.
The White House is set to spend $1 billion on in-home rapid COVID-19 tests. It expects this will quadruple the number of such tests available for Americans by December. Our U.S. correspondent Rachel Silverman has more.
This new investment builds on $2 billion the administration is using to boost production of a number of different COVID-19 tests. It comes after an increase in demand driven by the Delta variant, which strained the nation's supply of rapid at-home tests. The White House is also planning to double the number of pharmacies participating in the government's free testing program to 20,000. The U.S. has lagged behind several European and Asian countries in testing.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, where you can call in, take control of the airwaves, and talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 if you want to do that. And if you value that, the ideas of a national radio show allowing anyone to call in and express their opinions, their viewpoint, their way of looking at things, you might consider joining the AMP program. You can find it over at amp.freetalklive.com. That's what Chris Hickman here has done. Chris is a gold level amplifier, which means Chris is giving $10 per month to the AMP program. And we thank you so much for that, Chris. It's probably not the best time to really join the AMP program, but it is still joinable. If you're using PayPal or cryptocurrency, you can still join the AMP program. And that helps us reach a larger audience to spread the ideas of liberty, to reach more listeners with our podcast, with our radio show, all of that. So check it out, amp.freetalklive.com. Chris, thank you so much for your contributions. We hope to have something set up relatively soon to replace the AMP program. For anyone who's been watching freetalklive.com, it's almost non-functional at this point. You can't even download the actual show there anymore because SoundCloud keeps changing things and it's making everything difficult to work together. You know, when you're doing this, everything has to work. Now it kind of doesn't. And regrettably, the person who was responsible for making all of that stuff work died last week. That was Michael Hampton. So now we have to come up with our own solution to these things because none of us have the programming knowledge or capabilities that, he had. So anyway, speaking of people dying, evidently, according to this Italian doctor, 7 out of 10 people who suffer side effects from the COVID-19 vaccine end up dying from said side effects. And I think I have a clearer understanding now that he's talked a bit more about what he means by what they mean by fragile. They just mean people who aren't particularly healthy, people who have comorbidities like diabetes and stuff like that, not necessarily fragile in the way that we would think of them.
Yeah, and this is translated from Italian, so you can kind of tell in some of like his medical jargon. I'm like, that's not how we say it in the U.S., but
I suspect they use fragile where we would use like unhealthy or something.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. So this article goes on. So basically, this doctor is recounting this story of a patient that he was seeing on a house call as an ambulance doctor. So he got to the house. The patient was at 88% oxygen saturation.
Now, what does that really mean?
For reference, we want people to be above 92. You right now are probably at 98.
Okay.
Or 98 to 100. That's what most people that are healthy are sitting at right now. And was having tonic-clonic seizures. So she was having convulsions.
So your oxygen blood level just means if it's higher, more oxygen is successfully getting into your bloodstream?
Yes, is being diffused to your tissues. Yeah, so is in your blood, but also being exchanged from like your cells.
Isn't it painful? I mean, doesn't that hurt your like muscles and stuff when they start receiving less oxygen?
Yes. Yeah. Well, you become very weak, and it mostly just frightens people because they feel like they don't have enough. Like you can tell when you don't have enough oxygen to your tissues because you feel like you can't breathe, even if you are properly breathing. If you're if the oxygen can't be transported from your blood into your tissues, you still kind of feel like you're suffocating because technically you kind of are.
Sounds horrifying.
Yeah, oxygen's useless unless you can transport it to your cells. You're
Makes
breathing,
sense.
cool, but if you can't use that oxygen, it's pointless, which is what we're seeing with people with COVID and a lot of these vaccine reactions. So since this woman was not epileptic, the doctor thought that it must be acidosis, which is just high acidity in the blood, due to the fact that the oxygen tank which she was attached to was at a very low level. Therefore, I took her to the hospital, as I thought the patient was metabolically decompensated. That was later until we took her to the ER. The rest of the story I learned from a colleague who works in the PO, but occasionally substitutes for an ambulance. The patient had a pleural effusion and a pericardial effusion, which is fluid built up in the lungs and fluid in the sac that the heart is inside of, which is different than pneumonia. People think that people think that pleural effusion and pneumonia are the same thing. And a lot of doctors were misdiagnosing that with COVID patients. They were thinking that people had pneumonia, which really they had pleural effusions. So they were intubating people, they were putting people on ventilators, but since there was fluid built up in the lungs, it was not helping. So, and the patient also had...
And the reason I guess they were diagnosing that is because pneumonia also causes fluid to build up in the lungs.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes, but if you look, I'm not a doctor, so honestly, I don't know the ins and outs of it. But from what I understand, on an x-ray, a doctor should be able to tell the difference.
Okay.
So the patient also had capillary leak syndrome, which is when plasma and other fluids leak out of the capillary beds. And so you get edematous, you get edema, so you get fluid in the, I'm like trying to explain this without like going into a bunch of medical jargon, but basically you just become really swollen with fluid in your skin.
I didn't realize that. I didn't know edema was, I thought it was just the name of like this hit and miss fly-by-night rock band from like 2002 or something.
Nope, it's also fluid built up from the tissues.
Weird name, weird thing to name their band.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a band named that. That is kind of weird. I wonder if it means something else too.
They're not worth looking into. They had like 2 songs that were popular and then they went away, like most of those early 2000 bands did.
So this doctor is saying that in his opinion, based on these symptoms, that he thinks it's a neurotoxicity from the COVID vaccine, which many of his colleagues did not recognize because none of them diagnosed it at the hospital. And he says, after all, even us ambulance doctors, if I dare to venture a suspicion of diagnosis, they take me for crazy. So basically he's saying if he speaks out like, oh, I think this might be an adverse reaction from the vaccine, they're like, nope, you're just crazy. And we're seeing that a lot.
You're just an ambulance doctor. What do you know?
And I hear that all the time. You guys are just nurses. What do you know? Well, we're with the patients 24/7. We have more intimate connections and more personable connections with these patients. I mean, we're literally taking care of them, doing, all of their care. So
you would hope that a doctor would be open to any and all possibilities. It's like, okay, well,
yeah,
maybe it is a reaction to the COVID-19 vaccine. Let's report it.
And for most things, a doctor will take what a nurse has to say into account because they know that nurses are there all the time where they only see a patient for like 10 or 15 minutes. But for some reason, when a nurse brings up, hey, this patient got their second dose of the vaccine 2 days ago, maybe it's a vaccine reaction. They're like, nope, absolutely not. Most doctors are saying that. They won't even fathom it. I don't know if there's something else that has to do with it.
Well, it would probably complicate their lives if they had to do all of that paperwork while also dealing with all of their other patients. So to get their jobs done, it's probably easier for them to just like, nope, I'm not even considering that possibility.
And they probably don't want to be the doctor to diagnose that because they don't want to be looked at like they're crazy. So It's so much easier to be like, nope, that's a crazy nurse than to put their career on the line. So it seems like people are
protecting their careers by killing people.
Yep, and it's tough right now in healthcare, and it seems like a lot of people are burnt out, and they don't even have the extra energy to, do all this extra work and especially if you feel like you're alone, it's like, okay, so you say something, nobody believes you, and then what? Do you put out all of this extra energy to keep making a big stink about it, and then what's going to happen after that?
And then they pull your medical license.
Exactly. So, and then you have no credibility at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we're seeing it a lot across the country from all the nurses and doctors I've been talking to.
And it's only
They're
going to
seeing it a
get
lot.
worse. New York is so stupid. They just fired 1,400 people from their healthcare field.
No, it's okay. They're just going to have the National Guard come in.
Well, that's their plan, but I don't think that what they don't understand is, as Conan pointed out to us, the people who are qualified to do that, who are in the National Guard, are doing that at other hospitals in other parts of the country. So it's not adding new healthcare workers. It's just eliminating some and moving others around. It's Free Talk Live.
Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it. And once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world. So I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. Physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live with Aria, Lori, and Nikki. And we're talking about the current plan by the state of New York. And I assume other governors are going to have the same brilliant plan to mobilize the National Guard. And what most people interpret this to means is, they're going to have soldiers running who, fought in Afghanistan or whatever, running around giving people shots and stuff like that. That's not really what they mean. And it was Conan who pointed this out to us, I think, last week's Tuesday episode, that no, they mean they're going to have the medical staff within the National Guard, the doctors and the nurses who are already in the National Guard, probably as weekend warriors on call if they, if the United States starts another war, they'll get deployed or whatever. But they're already working at other hospitals and other doctors' offices. And there's only so many of those in the first place. And you're not going to solve any problems by taking those people out of, Cheshire Medical, draft them back into the National Guard and send them to New York, because then Cheshire Med is just short one more doctor. And you fired the 1,400 that could replace that doctor. It's all very stupid, and it's a bad plan. And it only got worse when you pointed out during the break, Lori, that they're firing people for not getting vaccinated, but people in the National Guard have until June of 2022 to get vaccinated. They have almost 9 months. No, that's over 9 months. It's almost 10 months in order to get vaccinated. So they're firing people who don't want to be vaccinated so that they can forcibly draft people who aren't vaccinated or have no guarantee of being vaccinated and who don't have to be vaccinated until halfway through next year.
It's just a giant slap in the face, too. It's like, okay, so us nurses were good enough to work in the COVID units unvaccinated, short-staffed, we were drowning. We were so short-staffed. People were being forced to stay extra. It was ridiculous. But now they're going to fire us for being unvaccinated and then bring in people who are also unvaccinated. It's just...
But you're heroes. Doesn't that make you feel okay now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's go to the phones. We have Kadu calling from Connecticut. Kadu, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, yeah. I always take a conspiratorial angle on things, so this view will be influenced by that.
Okay.
But my suspicion is almost that this bringing the National Guard thing in serves their interest in a couple of ways. One is that it makes it look like it's more of a crisis. So they can go oh, wow, things are so bad now, with this COVID situation. Now they have to actually bring in the National Guard. So it aids to that. It creates this kind of atmosphere that oh, things must be really bad. They've got to bring in the National Guard.
Do you think people are genuinely? Do you think people are stupid enough to fall for that? I mean,
yes.
Because the reason it's going to get that bad is because they literally fired their staff.
Yeah, I think they are stupid enough because what you're and I'm with you, Aria, but people are not paying attention to those kind of details really, what caused what. They're just seeing what the after effects. And then they're just going to go by that. They'll be like, oh my God, now it's so bad that the military's in there, whatever. But the second thing is, I think it serves their interest bringing in the National Guard. Is that it's one step towards the militarization of medicine.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
What do you mean by the militarization of medicine?
Well, okay, they've been trying to put a lot of pressure on people to get these vaccines, a lot of social pressure. Yes, there's mandates in some places, but I feel like this National Guard thing is a further step towards I don't know exactly what the National Guard does, but I'm assuming it's connected to the military, right? So bringing
they are controlled by the Pentagon, I think.
Yeah, so it's bringing in a military influence into a medical setting. So I think they're probably very happy that they're even able to do that.
Well, again, I don't think it's likely that they're going to have, your combat soldier in there giving people shots or anything like that. I don't think that's what they meant. But there are a lot of doctors and nurses and other healthcare workers who are also, weekend warriors with the National Guard or the Army Reserve or whatever. And they're going to call those people up, I think. So they probably won't even be recognizable as National Guard members. They'll just look like average doctors who are a little bit more upset than normal because they've been dragged away from their families to go be a doctor somewhere else and get paid National Guard rates instead of their hospital rates.
So when I worked at the nursing home, we had the National Guard come in to, for some reason, COVID test all the nursing home residents as if a nurse isn't more than qualified to do it. I don't know. But they were dressed like they looked like they were in the National Guard. I don't know if it'll be different with the hospitals. It might be. Who knows? I guess we'll find out in New York.
Thank you so much.
At the very least, it's bringing like a state influence into the medicine.
Well, that's been there for a while.
Yeah, right.
Well, thank you so much for the call tonight, Kadu. I definitely don't want to see the National Guard I don't want to see the state doing any of this, but I don't want the Army, the military, to be in hospitals if it can be avoided. And it looks like it could pretty easily be avoided if you just didn't fire your staff.
Yeah.
But things are different in Italy, where this Italian doctor that we've been listening to is seeing just all sorts of people dying if they develop side effects from the COVID-19. 7 out of 10 of them, he says, go on to die. And as you pointed out, doctors don't want to deal with it. They don't want to face it. They don't want to admit it, because if they come out saying that, hey, look, I think these vaccines are causing side effects that are killing people, they're going to get crucified in the media.
Yep. And so this doctor also goes on to say that they have accessed the records of the vaccine side effects. And from January to today, we are witnessing an exponential decline in reports because hospitals are the ones that are deciding if there is a correlation or not the clinics. So even if a doctor says, hey, this is a vaccine side effect, in a clinic, if the patient transfers to the hospital, if the hospital doctor on staff says, no, it's not, then it doesn't get reported. So the official data that comes out is that there are no side effects, and that there are 1 in 8, a side effect is 1 in 8 million. I can say without hesitation that this is not true, because in every single shift I do in the ambulance, I get at least one patient with these symptoms. And I'm seeing the same exact thing in the hospitals in the United States.
I mean, even like tested common medications and shots have way more side effects than that.
Yep.
But they think that people are just going to, well, they do, buy that this new untested thing that just came out is going to be super duper safe and have no side effects and everything's going to be great.
And they are buying it.
That's crazy.
People are buying it. People are buying into this full force. And they are eating up whatever they're fed.
And when you realize what the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines do, which is program your body to create spiky things that go through your bloodstream, it's obvious that blood clots would be a result of that.
Yeah.
Because they're not smooth and circular like cells are. They have places where they can snag each other and create a clot.
So it normally wouldn't be an issue, but the fact is that the body is overproducing them, and that's where the issues are coming from. So if it worked as it was intended, there will probably be minimal side effects. But there is clearly some flaws in this medical technology, but instead of testing it and tweaking it and fixing it, they just decided to give it to every single person on the planet.
Yeah, and then what happens when you mix it with things like birth control that so many people are on that causes blood clots, smoking, high cholesterol, like all these other things that cause blood clots, and you're going to add one more element on top of that to cause blood clots.
Yeah, and most of the people that we're seeing with vaccine side effects or that are getting really, really sick from COVID are all obese, or they have COPD, or, people all have these underlying conditions which are kind of mixing with, the vaccines or, whatever.
Right, compounding the side effects.
Yep.
See, that's why I won't get the vaccine. I could probably get a legitimate medical exemption for it because I'm on estrogen, which causes blood clots, and I'm a smoker, which also tends to cause blood clots. Mm-hmm. Increasing that risk doesn't seem like a good idea.
Right. If you just have a job where you sit down during the day, blood clots.
But they also don't care. It is very, very difficult to get a medical exemption, period. And now with the COVID-19 vaccinations, it is so hard to get a medical exemption. It's actually easier to get a religious exemption.
Yeah, because they're denying that there are any medical side effects. They're saying, no, it's perfectly safe. There's no side effects.
They finally found the perfect wonder drug that nothing ever goes wrong.
Exactly. And like this Italian doctor is saying, there's just a total gap in what's being reported. So if doctors say that they're not seeing this and that it's something else, then it's something else.
And no one's doing anything about it. No one ever will do anything about it because the government insists it's perfectly safe. And you can't talk about this on most social media platforms, but you can talk about it on our social media platform. So head on over there and join us at social.freetalklive.com. You can find us there. That's social.freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is